two. Check two. Hello. Check. Check two. Two. What is up? What's up, friends? Got, so yesterday, as you know, I was going on this kind of like ironic riff about HAVANA syndrome and kind of doubting the existence of HAVANA syndrome and kind of claiming that it was just made up, by the CIA and these kind of spies in an effort to kind of, you know, whatever, justify Cuban sanctions, to suggest that they're kind of under assault from these countries, planting this idea that Cuba or North Korea are trying to have access to some kind of like science fiction energy weapon. And obviously that was a joke, and all that stuff is real. Clearly, when I was getting into this yesterday, somebody didn't like it. We don't need to get into the who's and the how's and the why's, but obviously that was just a joke. And I don't believe that. I do think it's real. I don't want to deny or doubt the lived experiences of any diplomats or CIA analysts or agents or whoever else. You know, they're valid. The things that they say are valid. The things that they say are valid, and obviously I agree with what they're saying. And I would never certainly use this platform to publicly cast doubt on that. And if any of you were offended, if anyone watching was offended by my words, my insensitive remarks, I do apologize. I take full responsibility and I apologize. Clearly, when I was on this riff, this ironic joke riff yesterday, someone was obviously watching and didn't like it. My internet was completely cut off while I was joking around about this. My internet was completely cut off. While I was doing this joke, my router was just completely...
You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
I have family vacationing in Florida. They're all affected with HAVANA syndrome. They are deploying their psychic rays at spring training baseball games.
Oh no. Kijiji, I'm sorry to hear that. Thank you for the 27 months of Prime. And I'm sorry to hear that your family is being affected by this very real phenomena. Directed energy weapon aimed straight down your internet tubes. Yeah, exactly. And we all saw when I had that kind of ringing sensation in my ears and some dizziness the other day. I think I'm being affected by the same thing, which is exactly why I shouldn't be joking around about it. So my router was just completely useless, bricked, brand new router. I called yesterday. I had to go and take my router and go to the mall in LaSalle to the Bell store to exchange it for a new one. And then I came back to plug in the new router, and that also didn't work. And was also getting another error, so I had to call again and go on the phone with them again. And they sent out a technician today to apparently it was the outside. The outside was the problem. That's where the problem is coming from. Almost as if someone came by and snipped the wires. Can you imagine? What a crazy coincidence. What a crazy coincidence that is, that those wires were destroyed immediately as soon as I started talking about this subject. Just one of those crazy coincidences, you know? So anyway, the technician came out today, very helpful, fixed the issue. My internet's back, and I will not be joking about this very real phenomenon any longer. I don't know what the Canadian CIA is. I mean, CSIS would be like the FBI because it's like domestic. I don't know who handles our like international spy stuff. Is that also CSIS? I don't even know. Do they just do everything? No, actually no. I think CSIS would be like the CIA, and the RCMP would be like the FBI. I think that would be the analogy. Last Friday, I went to a Caribbean-themed bar. Next morning, I had a headache. Couldn't remember anything, and my wallet was empty. Pretty sure it was a directed energy weapon. I think that's probably correct. I think that was probably the case. Anyway, just one of those crazy coincidences. Crazy coincidences that my internet wires were snipped, apparently. Stop pretending you have independent agencies. It's just FBI and CIA Canada. That's true. I mean, whoever it is, they're just taking their marching orders from the State Department. I mean, I saw that story. We were talking the other day about how they're banning TikTok on government phones, right? In Canada. And I see they're doing the same thing in the United States as well, like a couple days later. So that was obviously coordinated, right? We obviously got the word from the U.S. State Department. Yeah, we're going ahead with banning the TikTok, so make sure you follow up on that. And we were like, yes, sir. Yes, sir, America. Is there anything else we can do for you? And they said, no, just that for now. Last night I smoked a fuckload of weed and fell asleep to TNG, aka Havana Syndrome. I didn't do much after RoboCop. We had another great TRRS movie night in the books. Watched RoboCop last night. I didn't watch anything else. I hung out with my partner a little bit. It's funny that they do that when all the local agencies here in Florida all use Huawei. That is funny. That is funny. You'd think that they would be beyond that now. Forever associate this emote with RoboCop. Bitches leave. I mean, again, it's like it was cool watching the movie because I love Verhoeven. I could especially love Total Recall, but I've definitely seen RoboCop, but not for a long time. It was not one of my like iconic movies in the Rob canon. Like I like it and I appreciate it a lot, but it was not a movie that I watched repeatedly growing up, like Aliens or like Total Recall or Terminator 2 or whatever. So I did really enjoy revisiting it, especially in the context of the discussions we've been having lately about Verhoeven and about like the satire, the sort of Verhoevenist satire of the 80s. And how totally on the nose so much of it is, and how, if anything, it seems tame. Like, the satire is so cartoonish in those movies, but, like, it honestly, our society currently is significantly less ridiculous. Or, the cartoonish Verhoevenist satire is less ridiculous than our current society. You know? I think that's pretty amazing. Hilarious that RoboCop turned into a hyper-commercialized Saturday morning action cartoon franchise. Well, that's the thing about Verhoeven is that he makes these films like RoboCop and like Starship Troopers where it kind of became the very thing that it's satirizing for a lot of people. Like, there are a lot of people came away from Starship Troopers being like, yeah, kill those bugs. We got to defend all these white people with German-sounding names living in Venezuela and South America. You know? Well, Starship Troopers just didn't have the same level of cultural saturation as RoboCop did. I believe there was a Starship Troopers TV show, though. I don't know if I'm crazy, but I feel like there was. One thing I loved about the sort of Verhoeven satire in RoboCop that we saw yesterday that I thought was so pertinent to right now is the whole thing about like the Ed 204? What's the number? Ed 209. Right, this like mech cop that just decimates that corporate guy and shoots that corporate guy in the boardroom like 50,000 fucking times. And I thought that was so fascinating how like the other guy at the company uses the failure of Ed 209 to like push his whole like RoboCop idea, which pisses off Ronnie Cox a lot. And I thought Ronnie Cox has such a great line, like right before he's about to like take that guy out. where he's like, he is the goated Ronnie Cox. Exactly. And we're going to see him next month, the next TRRS movie night, as President Milos Cohagen in Total Recall, where he's also just the fucking man also. But yeah, that was Ed 209. That was the stop motion one who can't do stairs. The stop motion is just fantastic in RoboCop as well. As much as I love that 80s, 70s, and 80s filmmaking, stop motion rarely ages well. It's like the one kind of practical effect from the pre-CGI era that almost always looks pretty bad, no matter who's handling it. But I thought it looked fantastic in RoboCop. Even in Terminator, which I love, the stop motion is like it's okay, but it's still kind of like noticeably stop motion. They do sell it with the sound design as usual, Carrier Wave, as usual. But anyway, the line that I thought was so great from Ronnie Cox is when he's just like, he's talking about all the military contracts they're going to get with Ed 209, and he's like, who cares if it works? And I was just like, that made me think so much of the F-35 and the way these defense contractors operate. Getting these $1 trillion defense contracts to produce shit technology that they sell. They put together this really flashy presentation to sell to the government types to get these big contracts, but this shit doesn't actually work. It doesn't actually work that way. You know? The F-35, it doesn't even fly when it's cloudy out. We spent like $1.5 trillion on this plane. Right? I thought that was so pertinent to everything, especially as well with like the whole public-private partnership going on in RoboCop. Really, the whole tech industry, that's how it works, right? The whole tech industry is all based on these like tech demos, which are highly stage managed, which generate billions of dollars in VC funding for usually products that will never ever work as they're being sold. Like that's Elon Musk's whole business model. Market a big idea and hope you can reach it. And if you don't, well, oh well, we still got the contracts. So that's really the important part, not delivering a product that actually works as the way that we're saying that it's going to. Like, look at Elon Musk with his self-driving Teslas, or the Hyperloop. You know, the Hyperloop. What was promised initially, what was shown in the tech demos, versus here is a concrete tunnel with a single car driving in it at like 30 miles per hour, and futuristic cyberpunk lighting. You know. I'm so excited to see where the robot goes. I think we've seen the extent to where it goes already. The exact reason we need a planned economy. VCs are spending billions of dollars to create 5 flavors of Uber that don't even work properly. Seriously, the amount of resources that have been fucking wasted over the last 10 years in tech, but really going back decades with the whole like military industrial grift. The amount of resources that have gone into these technologies, which could have gone to anything else. The level of like utopian society we could be living in is really staggering to think about. Anyway, I did really enjoy watching RoboCop. Really looking forward to Total Recall, because that's really the Verhoeven movie that I love the most. Like I was saying yesterday, RoboCop could have very easily just been forgettable schlock, and Verhoeven, just being the level of talent that he is, really elevated into this iconic thing. But it's kind of low budget. You know, it wasn't guaranteed to be a hit. It wasn't guaranteed to resonate with people. But Total Recall, that's when Verhoeven, now he had this big hit, and it's like more, he's got a way bigger budget. He's got Arnold Schwarzenegger at the absolute height of his popularity. So you see Verhoeven with Total Recall operating in that like kind of big budget kind of blockbuster space, which he was not at that level for a super long time in his career. But Total Recall represents just the coming together of all these different talents and creative minds with Verhoeven, with Schwarzenegger, and the rest of the cast, which is fantastic. Sharon Stone and Michael Ironside and Ronnie Cox, and like the absolutely the great cast, all the great makeup effects. The score, I think, is Alan Silvestri, if I remember correctly. The Philip K. Dick story that it's based on, it's all these amazing and very talented and exceptional people all coming together in the same project. I maintain Showgirls is decent. I know a lot of people really like Showgirls. And I think it's Showgirls is the same thing where people miss the satire, right? That's the whole thing with Verhoeven. Is if you just look at what's on the surface and you see the schlock and you miss the message that he's trying to kind of send across. I haven't seen it in a long time, so I can't really comment on it. I just remember, the other parts of it. But I think it's that kind of a thing, yeah. Where the kind of satire that's there is kind of missed. The point of Showgirls is that whether she's stripping and considered trash or the star of a big Vegas production, the men treat her like a sex object, and it's the same job with different pay. RoboCop might have been his jump-off point for bigger budgets. Yeah, I think so. Similar to Terminator, right? If Terminator had flopped, then James Cameron probably would have not gone on to do all these other things. But it was because it was a kind of a low-budget, lightning in a bottle thing that became a huge hit and kind of an iconic film. It catapulted him to all this other stuff. I'm sure I have no idea what parts you mean. Yeah. I watched the 2014 RoboCop. I never saw that one. My understanding is that it did have kind of an element of satire to it as well, but it wasn't quite really as interesting or subversive. Anyway, I did really enjoy watching the film with you all last night. That was great. I really enjoyed that one. Was frustrating that I couldn't stream yesterday. I'm going to try and do a full day today. It was like a little bit tricky trying to schedule the rest of the time here. I am going to be off for most of next week, in case I hadn't mentioned that. I'm going to be away Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and we'll see after that. Because I don't really want to miss too much time. I would like to try and kind of make up for it, but I will be away for most of next week. So I wanted to make sure that I could at least finish out this week, and that's why it was frustrating to deal with this totally coincidental accident with my internet. You submit your time off request. I don't recall approving it. I'm sorry, Jay. I'm sorry. I think both Cameron Terminator movies are great, but my favorite is the first one because it's just so fucking bleak, and in the middle of the Reagan era, it leaves us no doubt as to how fucked we all are when Sarah Connor drives towards the storm clouds, symbolizing the imminent impending nuclear annihilation. I love the first one as well. As much as I love T2, and I do, I think it's like basically a perfect movie, but I like Terminator the first one because it's basically a horror movie, you know? It's like if you saw It Follows, it's kind of similar to that. Arnold Schwarzenegger is just terrifying in Terminator. It's kind of a very different vibe compared to, it's a chase movie, yeah. It's a very different vibe, even though there's a lot of the same beats. It's a very different vibe compared to the more blockbuster Terminator 2, which is like aimed at more of a wider audience, and it's got a kid, and it's got kind of a theme of like family and stuff like that. Kind of, it's a boy and his robot movie. Terminator 1 is just terrifying, though. They're both perfect and very different, yeah. Great soundtrack. Great soundtrack. Yeah. That was very good. Eddie Furlong. Lodane, are you pro or anti-Eddie Furlong? I thought he did a great job in T2 for a kid. Although, you know what? This had never occurred to me. I did watch it the other day. I mentioned I watched it the other day with my kid, Terminator 2. And it occurred to me, I got really confused because the first film, and this is like a pointless thing to get hung up on. It's kind of silly to even think about it, but the first film takes place in 1983, right? So John's born in 1984. Terminator 2 was released in 92, filmed in 91. So he should be like 7 or 8 in that movie, but he's like 11. What's going on with that? I never thought about that. I was watching it the other day and I was like, yeah, how old is he supposed to be? Like 11 or 12 at least. But the movie is only set 7 years, 7, 8 years after the first one. Played a little fast and loose. I thought it was supposed to be set in 95 or 97. Well, it just never specifies. I know the whole nuclear apocalypse is supposed to be 97, so maybe it's just the idea is that it's like 95 or 96, but they never say. Maybe he just has a genetic disorder and ages faster. He went to the beach that makes you old. I don't know. It's kind of a silly thing to get hung up on. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Trash the whole thing. That's right. Who cares? Throw it in the bin. Yeet it into the bin. Terminator is so good when you watch it as a warning about the inhumanity of the military-industrial complex, killing machines wearing human faces. Yeah, and it's weird too that we're like inventing all these AI things now, and people are like naming it like, oh, Skynet, oh, we're called Cyberdyne and stuff like that. And you're like, do you get that this is not supposed to be good? Like, do you get that your unaccountable like defense AI should not be called Skynet? The whole point of that was that it was like bad, you know? Well, I agree, Carrier Wave. I agree. I mean, it's not loser shit. I'm just saying that it's like I had never thought about it until I watched it the other day, and I was like, wait, when is this supposed to be taking place? All right. That's all. We're torment nexusing evil robots into existence. That's right. All these fucking nerds grew up watching these films and learning all the wrong lessons from it. Like we're talking about with RoboCop and everything. Now they're just like actually inventing RoboCop. And they're like, isn't this great? It's just like the movie. And it's like, no, it's not great. No. No, it isn't. Very strange. I think something that is lost on a lot of people when they watch Terminator is that we make the robots that destroy us. It's not the Terminator's fault. We do it to ourselves. It's in your nature to destroy yourselves. If they don't make that clear. I don't think any programmer alive could make the Terminator. I'm not worried. Well, that's the whole thing. They couldn't, but it's a temporal loop. It's like a What do you call that? When it's like a... Fuck. I'm losing my own geeky terms now. It's a paradox, that's right. Because in the first film, and this was cut out of the first film, but the whole end set piece of the film takes place at this factory, right, where she crushes the Terminator in the machine. And there's this deleted scene where it pans out, and it shows that it's a factory for Cyberdyne Systems. So, and they're like, wow, this computer chip is crazy. We've never seen anything like this. We better get this into the R&D quickly and check this out. So it creates this loop where they get the idea for the Terminator from the future. Which gives it this whole kind of like interesting kind of Twilight Zone-y thing. I'll just take out the Terminator when he plugs into charge at night. No, yeah, that was cut. That was like a deleted scene. And Brickin with the firmware update. He actually explains that he's got a power cell that lasts for like 200 years, okay? And it's deep inside his metal endoskeleton. So it's not quite as simple as you're making it out to be. You get away because the Terminator you have to watch like 3 30-second ads before he can work. That's the time you have to escape. Before I'm killing you, I just have to tell you about stamps.com. Did you know that if you need to send mail, you use stamps.com and save money and time? Well, you don't need to go to the post office. You can print out your stamps at home and send your packages from home. If you go to stamps.com and use the discount code Terminator, and you're escaping while he's giving the spiel. Shutting down at the moment of truth because Skynet didn't renew the license. Someone forgot to renew the fucking license. My hand is a living tissue of a metal endoskeleton. That's how you get away. We're going to have to look at those ones next, okay? After Total Recall, we're going to have to do T1 and T2. This is not my Tim Pool look, no. First of all, I invented this look, so Tim Pool is copying me, number 1. Number 2, he wears a beanie. This is not a beanie. I'm not a beanie fan. I don't like beanies. This is a toque. The Abyss would be good too. That scene where he kills Sarah's roommate's boyfriend, but he's on a Casper mattress. What a terrifying scene too. That's what I mean. It's like scary. It's really scary. I'll be back after enjoying a nice vacation thanks to Sandoz Resorts and Travel. It's not a beanie. I would like to do The Abyss as well. I haven't seen The Abyss in a long time. I haven't seen The Abyss in a really long time, and I would really enjoy watching it. I like it. It's Cameron doing kind of like a big ideas science fiction movie, which is cool. With all the cool Cameron stuff as well, and the amazing filmmaking that they did, like with all the submerging the sets in water and lighting all the sets underwater and stuff. Like, it's fucking incredible. Michael Biehn is in that one as well. A rare kind of like psycho bad guy, mustached Michael Biehn. He's so like angelic and innocent in T1. And he gets psycho, paranoid mustache Michael Biehn in The Abyss. I liked when the little kid asked the Terminator if it had a tumor. Honestly, Kindergarten Cop is very good as well. Oh my God, Kato, you almost had me there. You almost had me. The Abyss was the first movie I ever walked out of the movie theater saying it was my favorite movie. That's good. That's very good. I do have the movies planned out. Total Recall in April, Parasite in May, Scanners June, Network in July. Which ones did you want to add? And it doesn't have to be one of the first Wednesdays movie. You can do a special showing. I would want to add Terminator 1 and 2 and The Abyss into that. Okay, so sometime this summer, I would say sometime this summer, we should do a Terminator double feature. How about that? It's not a tumor. And you could know that and more if you just went to WebMD and used the code hypochondria now. That's also like 4 hours worth of movies. No, three and a half. The original Terminator is like a tight 90. It's not super long. And T2 is maybe like a little over 2 hours. It's not a tumor was our favorite thing to say when it was being screened for a tumor. It was a tumor. Sinchel, are you okay? That's scary. Oh, it was 20 years ago. Okay. Honestly, Arnold's 84 to 94 run was pretty epic. It's unparalleled. It's unparalleled. I've talked about this before. I did a podcast, Podside Picnic, a couple years ago where I talked about this because I'm a big Schwarzenegger fan. I mean, as much as Schwarzenegger became someone that he was mocked a lot for his accent and how silly it was and like how, you know, he could barely speak English, but like the run that he went on is completely unparalleled. And regardless, you can make fun of Schwarzenegger. You can say, oh, he had a weird accent. He's not a good actor. 4 Schwarzenegger movies, though, are in my top 10 films of all time. A claim which no other actor could make. I think objectively, you have to look at Schwarzenegger as one of the best to ever do it. And it's amazing. You watch Pumping Iron as well when he's just this meathead weightlifter. And you can just see it. He just has like so much charisma. Terminator, Terminator 2, Total Recall, Predator. All in my top 10 films of all time. He destroys Lou Ferrigno with psychological terrorism. He really does, yeah. He really does. It's pretty great. It's pretty great. What else have I been doing? Oh, you know what I've been doing, which has been really fun, is I've been reading The Hobbit to my son. That's been really cool. That's been something that I've been wanting to do for a while, but he wasn't really into it, but he like requested it the other day. So I've been reading some of that every night. I've been really enjoying that. That's been fun. Because the other day the whole song, the dwarf song, was stuck in my head. That's been really cool. Your boy's getting a great lit foundation for a lifetime of reading. Yeah, absolutely. And it's sad like that the Hobbit films were so shit, you know? And it's funny because the first film, which I actually think is pretty good, but people complain about that first like 45 minutes of The Hobbit with the songs and like the silliness, but like that's like that's The Hobbit. The whole thing about The Hobbit is like it's basically a children's book. It's not really like Lord of the Rings. But they tried, for financial reasons, they tried to turn it into a Lord of the Rings prequel, which apes all the kind of beats and apes the same tone, but it's not. It's not supposed to be the same tone. And it's sad that trilogy ended up being so just like forgettable. However iconic the Lord of the Rings trilogy was, The Hobbit, like people maybe saw the films in the theater and just has no cultural relevance. No one has revisited the movies. No one watches them annually. Maybe some people do. I don't know. But zero impact. No, I know Guillermo del Toro was supposed to do it. And that's the thing. The Hobbit should be a single movie. It should be one 3-hour movie, I think. And they made it 3 3-hour movies. That's the amazing thing. Like, fucking ridiculous. Just got out of a parent-teacher conference. The kid's all right. That's good to hear, Dakadoon. I got one tonight. He's doing pretty well in school, but we're going to have the conference tonight to get the skinny. I've been really enjoying reading that with him, though. It's been a lot of fun. Have you seen that footage of Peter Jackson in the weeds on the second or final film and just losing his mind with studio interference? No, I haven't. No. I imagine that sounds interesting, though, because it's a film that definitely doesn't... Seems like there was a lot of interference from the studio being like, no, yeah, we need to make this for... Again, you see how capitalism completely destroys the creative process. Even Peter Jackson, who made the studio billions with those films, probably just didn't have the leash to kind of do something different for these ones, or only make 2, or... No, we're getting 3 movies. You're giving us 3 movies. No, absolutely. I don't think that's a hot take at all. Making Benedict Cumberbatch crawl around in a mocap suit. No. I agree. It's just silly, too. You see the footage of him doing it, and you're just like, come on. Why do you need an actor to go like, scary face, just you do it in the computer, right? And it's not like it's Gollum who has like human features. It's like a fucking dragon. Just use the computer to make the dragon. Whatever. You don't need Benedict Cumberbatch crawling around, slinking around like a dragon. Bumberblarch cum dumpster, making Jim Carrey faces. Now, I've never heard that one. I have never heard that one. So forgettable, those movies, though. And I did really think I remember the trailer for the original and thinking like, oh, this is going to be so great. I was so excited. I really wanted to like it. And just like I saw all the movies in the theater, I can't remember a thing about them. Never even watched them. I think the first one is probably worth looking at. The first one is worth watching, especially the first 45 minutes, which I think is like the actual part of the movie that feels like a Hobbit movie. And just turning everything into this like huge crazy set piece, like the whole they're escaping in the barrels. In the book, it's just like, yeah, and then they escaped in some barrels, and then in the movie, it's this whole 15 minutes elaborate set piece action craziness. Yeah, it just felt like a video game, for sure. Yeah, they tried to add a bunch of lore shit about like the necromancer and Sauron and stuff. It also makes the whole talk about continuity errors feeling stupid, but it takes the whole thing of Gandalf then years later being like, oh yeah, what's going on with that ring? Even more ridiculous. You know? That's kind of a continuity error in Lord of the Rings that we don't. Again, the movies are so great that you don't think about it that much. But the whole idea that Gandalf had to like go research all this like ancient texts and stuff to find out the story of Isildur and the ring and the war and all that stuff. And then like eventually later on, once the movie starts, everyone's like, of course everyone knows that story about Isildur and the ring and all that stuff. It's like common knowledge, right? They go to Rivendell and the sword is still there, where apparently Gandalf's been many times. But he had to go to this like old Gondor library to read this lore to realize that Bilbo has the fucking ring. The ring. I don't know. We don't need to spend time fixating on this. I should get into the actual discourse. We can talk about the HAVANA syndrome story. I'm sure there's some interesting coverage of it. There's videos and stuff we can watch. I'm very hungry. And I don't have any food. I have not been able to like go grocery shopping because I've been injured. Yeah, I'm pivoting to like a CinemaSin style plot hole discussion. That's my new thing. Because talking about the very real phenomenon of HAVANA syndrome is obviously, joking around about that is obviously very upsetting to certain people. So I'm going to pivot to doing this now. Talk about plot holes in famous movies. Chin chin, everyone. Hey Zach, how's it going? You can pivot to only talking about 80s movie soundtracks. Call it cinema synths. Oh my. I like that. I like where you're going with that. Heck yeah. I have Toronto syndrome. It's way worse than Havana. Yeah, I got Montreal syndrome. It's cold and it makes my body hurt. Someone give me $1 million. Someone give me $1 million, please. I'm being targeted by enemies, official enemy countries. I got Maui Wowie syndrome. Let's see here. What are we going to discuss today? What are we going to discuss? We got Rania talking to Hirsch. On Breakthrough News. I'm sure there's a number of things we can get into. I really didn't plan this stream out too much because I was worried about getting the internet back. Did you see the shitty video I made with your song or no? Thinking about deleting it. No, I did not. No, I did not. What is this? I'm sorry, you asked me to send you something and I forgot, Marty. You might have noticed that I do that sometimes. Rob's going on Tim Pool. I should go on Tim Pool. Tim Pool blocked me years ago, like I talked about in the past, because I pointed out that he was having lunch and hanging out with all these white supremacists while trying to pretend to be a liberal centrist guy. I should go on Tim Pool. Where's this video? I don't even see what this video is. Your beanie would dominate and consume his. Again, it's not a beanie. I'm wondering if I got the invite to Tim Pool, would I fly out? Because he doesn't do the remote things. That was the whole thing with Sam Sater. Would I fly out to the Tim Pool compound? It would probably be good for my career to do it, but I really don't know. I really don't know if I would do that. We need a fucking compound. Why don't we have a compound? When will some big financial backer notice what I'm doing here, and some based former rock star or somebody needs to notice what we're doing here and finance a compound for us? Is that so much to ask? Is it so much to ask for a compound? I don't think so.
Space that we can fly to. Life will find a way, 'cause you know I try to. Keep in mind,
it's so fast.
Sometimes it's only human to take some time.
It's so fast.
Sometimes get lost forever inside of my mind. Sometimes it's only human to take some time. Sometimes.
That's good. It works well. It works well. That's good. Maybe we don't want to buy 20 acres to have our Canadian comrades not be able to get a visa because they belong to the CPC. Yeah. If that was the case, we would have to do kind of like a coyote border crossing shenanigans, which would be tricky. You know, that wouldn't be easy. I think we could pull it off. I'm sure we could. We'll settle on a area for the compound later, okay?
You've just become an elite member of the Friendship Triangle.
Oh my goodness.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Yo, my name, Jeff. Jeff, thank you for the 5 gifted subs. Look at that. Rocket right up to the elite tier of the Friendship Triangle system. First 5 gifted subs in the channel. Thank you, Jeff. I really appreciate that. Thank you. And thank you also to Quiet 185 for the 9 months of tier 1. Thank you. Stream Baby for Quiet 185. Wonderful. That was great. Long-time lurker, gotta pay it forward. Thank you, Jeff. I really appreciate it. Welcome to the elite tier of the Friendship Triangle system, Jeff. You've earned this. This is your moment. This is your moment. And if anyone else wants to subscribe and support the channel, I am just going to be here today and tomorrow, and we'll be off most of next week. So, you know, I won't be here hassling you and guilting you and shaming you and all that stuff. So if anyone else wants to contribute to the channel, support the channel,
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to
now would be a good time to do it. If you want to. Thank you, Diego, for the
You
gift.
can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
And thank you, LS, as well. Look at that. Thank you to you both. Very kind of you.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Wow. Okay, Rob. Seriously, wow.
Thank you, Diego, for another gifted sub also. And thanks, James. Oh my goodness, James Ed Smith. James, thank you for the whopping, extremely generous 10 gifted subs. Thank you, James. I really appreciate that. But getting guilted is my kink. Well, I can do that too, pry bars. If people, I mean, I don't like having to guilt and shame people. Sometimes just it's what you have to lean on if you want to try and make a living on this platform. It makes me a little uncomfortable, but certainly if there are people that respond to that, I mean, I can do that. You know? It's not my ideal way of going about things, but
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
if being guilted or shamed or you know, humiliated is what's gonna what's gonna keep the machine running, then you know we can talk about that. I really appreciate that, James. Thank you. Okay, and thank you, Marty. Thank you, Marty, for the gifted sub. It's funny. It's like I always feel so guilty about like cracking the whip on the subs. Like even though I think people that watch the show understand like why it has to be done, I always feel so shitty about it. Now I'm hearing from people that are like, no, do that. Yeah. Guilt me, shame me. You people are impossible to figure out. You don't like the LS. Okay, well, thanks for letting me know. It's gone. I'm just trying to shorten things. I did that for Ali, not for you, Rod, to be clear. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. You know, if the government name is Brian. Okay. Brian. I got it.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thanks, Sikalufakis, for the gifted sub as well. Just got here random, but I saw your channel in the background of my front page. I don't know if it's the algo for me, but I don't know the other streamers for what it's worth. Huh. Interesting. I think I have been getting some kind of like algorithmic attention lately. I don't know if it necessarily shows up in the viewers, but I've seen some VODs have like higher than normal numbers of views. So perhaps that is what's going on. I don't know. So folks, we do have this hype train. It's another minute and 20 seconds left in this hype train. It's at level 4. We are close to completing level 4. And like we could just like get through this section and with a whole part about subbing, a few generous chatters could get us there, and then we wouldn't have to think about it for the rest of the day. You know? Wouldn't that be kind of nice? Or what about this?
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
We simply
Thank you, Carrier
use the
Wave,
computer to mark up
for the
the
gifted sub.
size of the account.
TRRS Rob Mode 2 TRRS Rob Knife.
Thank you, Matt, for the 200 friend coin. Bezos hitting the Pro China Streams button. Listen, I can't complain. So we're 20 seconds away. 92% through level 4, folks. 92%. That's really close to level 5. Incredibly close. That's one more gifted sub away from level 5.
You've just become an elite member of the Friendship Triangle.
GMO Radio, thank you for the 5 gifted subs. Thank you. Thank you. Very kind of you. Goodness gracious. Everybody else would surely know. Watching her go. That key change is always tricky. We can get to like important discussion after this.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old
Okay?
Rob to
We'll get to
talk
the
you through
important
all
discussion
this.
after. Thank you, GMO Radio. I really appreciate it. And thank you, Jay, as well, for the gifted sub. I don't know, folks. One or two generous chatters could, in theory, could get over that sub goal, which would allow me to then spend the rest of this stream, the next 2 hours, actually talking about like important subjects, and would free me from the need to, try and bug people or humiliate myself
Good old Rob to talk you through all this.
until the number goes up. Thank you, Brian. Thank you for the gifted sub, Brian. I really appreciate the support. Everyone should give Lennon Smash a follow as well. That's what the trickle-down clout system is all about in the Friendship Triangle. Losing away. Love can come. Love can go. This is really a song that if you try to like seriously sing it, it's just a recipe for embarrassment. I'll try to do it sometimes in my car. I'll try to do it in the car, but in public, like I would never do this song in karaoke, you know? Yeah, Aretha did it because she's one of the greatest singers of all time, you know? I'm all right. I'm an all right singer. I'm okay, but it's not in my register. There's this version of this song it's like from their last, I think it was supposed to be their farewell tour in the early 80s. Obviously it wasn't, but it's from like 82 or something like that. The live version of this song, and it's from this outdoor concert, and it's just so perfect. It's so great. What do you say, folks? I got 45 seconds left in this hype trade. 45 seconds left. 5 subs away from hitting the goal. 5 subs away from hitting the goal. One generous chatter could be that you could have that good feeling of making the number into the good number. And then we wouldn't have to talk about it anymore. Until, like Sisyphus, tomorrow I have to reset everything and return back to the beginning of the mountain. This is just the nature of my career here. As a neoliberal influencer and small business owning wellness coach, I theorize Rob actually performs better when we don't reach the sub goal and he starts fearing the wrath of his mean Mountie landlord. Did anyone see that clip of the guy, like the success win influencer guy that was just like, if I was homeless, I'd go outside these big businesses and I'd ask for books and not money, because those people that are there that are successful,
good old Rob to
I'd want them to pass the knowledge on to me. And it's just like, you dumb fuck. No one that would ever be at risk of homelessness or living in that kind of situation would ever fucking say anything close to being like that. Thank you, Ben, for the gifted sub. Thank you, Ben. Yeah, the knowledge is having tons of startup capital. That's right. You simply get that's what it says in your success books. You simply you take out a 6-figure loan from your parents' loan. And that's how you get started. It's really easy. Buy my book. Buy my book. I can explain all these valuable concepts. Was my music playing in the background that whole time? I apologize. Okay, well, it's always good to get this sub segment out of the way. And now I think we can watch some kind of like a clip. I would like to talk about this HAVANA syndrome stuff. Because I think the amazing thing about the HAVANA syndrome thing, which we all knew was bullshit, like right away, obviously we did, right? We all knew that it was bullshit right away, but they still carved out, a few extra millions of dollars for healthcare for these spooks and diplomats that were affected by this like fake claim of these energy weapons. You know, which I find strange because like if you're a CIA analyst, like don't you have healthcare already? You know, don't you have decent healthcare if you're a CIA analyst or a diplomat? Or like, why don't this defense budget is like $800 billion? Why don't you just take it out of that? Why don't you just take it out of that and pay for the extra healthcare for the HAVANA syndrome directed energy weapons sufferers out of that? No, you can't do that. You can't just like have to use your normal healthcare that you get from being like a intelligence analyst. We got to carve out an extra couple of billion, you know, or for this. Even if it was real, the only thing the victims had in common was they worked for the security state, which would suggest it was the agency doing it, not Cuba. I mean, my stance on this has always been very clear. 5 agencies reviewed 1,000 cases and determined it was mass hysteria. Blinken disagrees. Oh, good. My case on this was my stance on this was always clear. I don't believe that Cuba has this technology, this directed energy weapon headache ray. I don't believe Cuba has this technology, but the big caveat there is if they do have the technology, I think that it's good and they should be allowed to keep it and we shouldn't interfere with that. You know, if they've been able to develop this kind of technology under the kind of blockades and sanctions that they've been under for now decades, I think that's an impressive accomplishment. That's a huge victory for socialism. So I don't believe it's real, but if it is real, I think it's good and they should be allowed to keep it. If it's a real thing, it's probably a side effect from some sort of spy gear NATO is using. I think it's a little thing called guilt. I think it's good old-fashioned. These imperialists are, you know, have this conflicting conscience when they're engaging in these terrible behaviors and, you know, oppressing people, destabilizing countries, trying to enforce U.S. hegemony at all costs around the globe at gunpoint. And they might think that that's okay. They might think that they believe the propaganda, but deep down they know that it's wrong, you know? Deep down they know that they're on the bad side. They're on the bad team. They're in the evil empire, you know? Even if they went to all the schools, they went to the Ivy League colleges, they've been through the whole like brainwashing process that like anyone that gets to this position has gone through. Deep down though, they know that there's something that's not right. And then it's that little conflict that I think is causing this. No, that's definitely not it. No, these people feel no guilt. Well, these people are psychopaths. Well, the thing is, I agree with that. But I think deep down, in whatever, if you believe in a soul, you know, even if they believe everything that they're doing is being done for the good reasons, and they individually don't see anything wrong with it, deep there's just buried beneath them, there is a sense of right and wrong in the universe, you know? And they're violating that. And it's that conflict which is causing them to develop headaches and tummy aches. That's true collective hysteria because their whole job is about being super paranoid about people foreign to them. I wanted to see about like the Biden administration. Because again, this is not just like some outlandish claim. This was, they signed a bill providing support for people that were the victims of this energy assault.
Signed the HAVANA Act into law today, but he did so out of public view. His statement today said that the United States government is offering resources to people who suffered from HAVANA syndrome incidents, but he stopped short of calling these incidents attacks. So at this point, what should the public know, and what can the public know about what Havana syndrome actually is and how it is caused.
I think the public should know that this president is the first president to acknowledge the existence of Havana syndrome or anonymous health incidents, that across the government, across the national security team, they're taking this incredibly seriously. The National Security Council has worked closely with departments and agencies to take a number of significant steps, standardizing the reporting process so that all possible AHIs that are reported by U.S. personnel, regardless of department or agency affiliation, are uniformly documented and quickly shared, improve the quality and speed of medical care, which is part of what this bill would help do, ensure there is financial support for that, ensure all relevant departments and agencies have messaged their workforce to provide guidance.
Okay, don't they have fucking
increase
insurance?
Intelligence collection and analytic focus on.
These aren't just like lowly gig workers. These are like intelligence analysts and diplomats. They don't have fucking health insurance. Why do they need more money? I genuinely don't get this. And it was a not insignificant amount of money that was carved off for this special health care for people that were afflicted by this terrible crisis.
On determining the cause of AHIs and enlist U.S. government and outside experts to increase our understanding. What is important to also know and understand is that we, of course, are determined to get to the bottom as quickly as possible of the attribution and cause of these incidents. The intelligence community is in the lead on that. They have launched a large-scale investigation into the potential causes. They're actively examining a range of hypotheses, but they have not made a determination about the cause of these incidents or who is responsible. So our focus is on starting a process that did not exist when the president took office. It's a huge priority for the government, the national security team, and the president was certainly pleased to sign the bill today.
Is Havana syndrome a threat to Americans, particularly those traveling abroad?
Probably has something to do with making sure someone doesn't have to pay out insurance claims. You could have had like these insurance companies being like, we're not paying for this obviously fake thing as well. So the government had to step in. Probably a carve out to approve quack medicine that regular insurance wouldn't authorize. That's what I mean. Yeah. And there was this one case when you had like the complete greed and selfishness of the insurance industry was maybe coming in, actually doing a good thing in this case, being like, we're not paying for this. Are you kidding me? You kidding me with this? We don't even pay for like life-saving cancer treatments for children. You think we're paying for this? How old is this clip? This is from 1 year ago.
I don't think you should make that assessment. We have not made an attribution. We have not made an attribution of the source, but we take every reported incident seriously. And what we want to do is ensure that our national security team is using every resource at our disposal, intelligence gathering, assessing, treating every incident seriously, ensuring people receive medical care, but without an attribution and without an assessment of the cause or the origin. I just don't want to go further than that.
There are still so many unanswered questions here. But more is coming.
This is from Scripps News. I don't know what the hell that is. From when was this? 6 months ago. The hell is Scripps News?
Light about the extent of this problem. The issue first made headlines after American diplomats and spies in Havana experienced puzzling brain injury symptoms in 2016, like dizziness, headaches, and memory loss. The government calls this mysterious syndrome anomalous health incidents. And now Newsy has exclusive details that FBI agents are also reporting these symptoms on U.S. soil.
There have been double-digit members of the FBI, employees of the FBI, who have been injured in multiple locations inside the United States.
Prominent national security attorney Mark Zaid represents current and former FBI personnel. He says a dozen or more incidents have been reported in Washington, D.C. and in Florida, mainly out of the Bureau's Miami field office.
These are cases that have been brought to the attention not only of the FBI, but also the CIA and the DNI and folks on the Hill.
His law books are My Cousin Vinny, The Firm, A Few Good Men. What's this guy, the fucking screenwriter? Who is this guy?
These have not been really
Is that the JFK
publicized
movie?
in
I
any
don't.
way.
Oh no, it is. Yeah, it is the JFK movie. What the huge My Cousin Vinny behind him. Who is this fucking guy?
In fact, the reality is domestic incidents are being
That is Kevin
downplayed,
Costner.
if not outright ignored by the U.S. government.
He says the incidents have mostly occurred within the last
What is this
4
news
years. The
platform?
common thread he's seen in victims.
What is Newsy? I'm gonna finish watching this, and we're gonna check into this. Someone said
across
Bellingcat,
multiple
but I didn't know if that was a
agencies
joke or if
is
that was
work
real.
related to Russia.
The AHI investigation is like an iceberg. We only see the top 1/3. Most of it is beneath the surface. I've seen beneath the surface, but even I have only seen a little bit beneath the surface.
Just this winter, the CIA assessed that most reports were either explained by medical or environmental conditions, not a foreign adversary. But the agency still couldn't rule out a nation state in a subset of cases. The attorney's requests for FBI records under the Freedom of Information Act have so far led to nothing. Here's a recent letter describing B7A exemptions, which withhold documents pending a criminal investigation. When Newsy described the incidents to the FBI, the Bureau told us the issue is a top priority and that the FBI takes all U.S. government personnel who report symptoms seriously, including messaging its
I
workforce
just found
about
something
how
interesting.
to respond if they experience an incident and where they can receive medical evaluations.
And this lawyer is also trying to obtain a 150-page report from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, which she says now is being called a draft, so that means that they could withhold it from his FOIA request. He says that the CIA is up in arms about its potential release because it contradicts the agency, and it hews more closely to a report by the National Academy of Sciences, which says that it's plausible this is pulsed electromagnetic energy. Meanwhile, a
This is
source
fucking
familiar
crazy.
with the matter says that's just not a fair depiction. Chance.
Wow, Sasha Ingber, you will not give up on this story. You've been after this. Exclusive reporting on
She's been after it. She refuses to get she refuses to give up on this. We've seen a few brave warriors that have been when these journalists think that they're like spies or whatever, and many of them are, as we're gonna see, and they get super offended by this kind of thing. Why aren't you taking this seriously? Why isn't the government doing anything about this? Like, we're seeing that in Canada right now with the whole Chinese interference thing, when these journalists get all high and mighty about this. Why isn't the government responding to these? This is an electromagnetic pulse energy being fired at our diplomats, and you're laughing. What's Newsy, though? What is that? From Scripps
Newsy
News.
is now
What is Scripps News? American News Network headquartered in Atlanta, owned by the E.W. Scripps Company. I've never fucking heard about this. So a couple interesting things, though. I just want to hear this one more time because it's amazing to hear a newscast talk about directed energy electromagnetic pulses. That's really fucking crazy when you think about it.
Energy. Meanwhile, a source familiar with the matter says that's just not a fair depiction. This is pulsed more closely to a report by the National Academy of Sciences, which says that it's plausible this is pulsed electromagnetic energy.
This is one, when people wear tinfoil hats and they talk about the electromagnetism and you have to go to block your Wi-Fi signal because it's impacting you. This is what it sounds like, right? This is yet one step removed from Marjorie Taylor Greene's Jewish space lasers. This is a news broadcast, and we don't even need to look at like newsy or whatever. This is like being reported all across. Like we looked at it. That's what our Havana syndrome emote is, right? There's a lot of mainstream reporting on this, and it's similar.
Cheryl Cruz speaking out for the first time about how her 20-year State Department career was cut short by a mysterious illness, the HAVANA syndrome.
I started with the vertigo and the tinnitus and brain fog.
Yeah, I'm getting older, lady. I'm getting older too. I feel like shit all the time.
Shutting down, like everything kind of went black.
She is among more than 200.
The U.S. government has dozens of patents on directed energy weapons that started in the 70s. If anything, it was our own people using this shit. Well, that's as usual. Yeah, that's what I think it is. Same with the spy balloon stuff. How China's just sending these spy balloons when we know that America is sending balloons fucking all over the place and spying on everybody. It's always an admission. It's always projection. So I don't doubt that this is another case of that. The same thing with the whole brainwashing thing. Those brainwashed troops in North Korea, when Korea said to them, like, why are you murdering us when your own government hates you? And some of these U.S. soldiers were like, actually, that's true. That makes a lot of sense. And they're like, what are these sophisticated brainwashing techniques? And then they financed decades of research with like MK Ultra and dosing people with LSD, trying to literally like break them down and reprogram their brains. As an effort to like counter this fantastic technology of North Koreans being like, actually, your government's kind of mean to you when you think about it. And these soldiers being like, that's right, they are. Damn. Why am I over here murdering Koreans? That doesn't make a lot of sense. They never did anything to me. And the CIA is just like, oh my God, this is outrageous. This technology, this brainwashing technology. Remember when Cypher blamed the Russians for his gray hair? I had an amazing exchange with John Cypher on Twitter over that I get tagged in sometimes, which was genuinely quite funny. If you can find me the tweet, we can call it up. Information equals power. Governments are trying to kill people using injection and wars, poisoning food, water, and air. Please, we need to wake up. I mean, it's not really the government's doing that. Isn't it like private corporations as well? You talk about like poisoning our food and water and air. Generally, the government in the past has played a role in like limiting the ways that private industry can poison us. And then there's been this decades-long process of taking the power away from governments and putting it in the hands of private industry and stripping away all regulation and stripping away all kind of safety guidelines and regulations and stuff, right? It's not really governments. Maybe there's kind of a private-public partnership with some of these Western governments, but I think you're kind of downplaying new chatter truth 008, 0008, 3 zeros. You're kind of downplaying the role that private industry plays in that process. Cypher blocked me. If you can find the Cypher tweet where he talks about that, we can take a look at it because it's very funny. I should turn my music off. It's been playing this whole fucking time. It's just influential interests that have government ear. The governments themselves are generally too disorganized to achieve these agendas on their own. Yeah, and exactly. And when other governments around the world try and assert power over private industry,
count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you, anonymous gifter, for the gifted sub. I appreciate that. Thank you. That's Alex Jones's burner account. Yeah, we don't need too much of that stuff. The internet's back, Lana. It's back. It's back. It's back, baby. But like my point is though, like, yeah, that when other governments around the world try to assert themselves against private industry, and when private industry, poisons people or spies on people, and they say, hey, you're not allowed to do that, you're going to jail or worse. And then what do we say? Well, they're authoritarian. They're authoritarian when they do that. We are so fucking back. It's true. Let's look at this again. It wasn't just like random, small time news outlets running these fantastical stories about Havana syndrome. This was mainstream media. There was a big media push on this. Like we talked about it a lot when it was going on. there was a big media push. And as we know, when it comes to like the CIA and Operation Mockingbird and all this stuff, like we know that when these big narratives start forming on media, it's being done very intentionally and with coordination, right? So this was a coordinated propaganda push last year that now I guess is being walked back, but it was very strange, mainstream media covering this.
Personnel and CIA officers afflicted around the world. Many still feel ignored.
I do not believe the department took me seriously. It was always, we'll get back to you. I have to ask myself, are they trying to disprove us, or are they trying to prove what happened?
And in Canada, 27 diplomats, military police, and family members are suing their government over incidents in Cuba. Who's responsible? Attention is focused on...
For sure, every State Department accusation is an admission. That's what comes up often on the show. It's always projection. But I think that's what we have to ask ourselves, because now you have these intelligence agencies like the CIA coming out and saying like, no, it's not directed energy weapons. It's not a foreign adversary, and kind of now downplaying it. So you got to wonder why they're doing that, right? And probably the reason is that what these people are experiencing is probably some kind of side effect of what America is doing or what the CIA is doing. And that's why they have to say like, no, there's nothing going on, because it's probably their own fault that they're doing it in the first place. If there's anyone trying to experiment with directed energy weapons, it's most certainly the Americans in these fucking embassies, which, as we've talked about before, these embassies, it has this official veneer, but they're basically, hubs of like spies and spooks and destabilization in these countries. Like that's what their function is. If you see the State Department of the U.S. and the CIA basically being linked, right? This like the State Department is just the political wing of the CIA. So all these consulates and these places where these people are working, it's just a haven for these kind of efforts. So they probably are being hit with energy weapons, and it's probably coming from the fucking basement of the buildings that they're working in, or it's just a hangover, or it's whatever else.
Russia, which U.S. intelligence says has the global reach and technology experts suspect could be the cause. In November, CIA Director Bill Burns warned Moscow there would be repercussions if it's behind it.
All of us at the State Department and across the U.S. government are intently focused on getting to the bottom of what and who is causing these incidents.
Tuesday night, Secretary of State Blinken visited doctors at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, where CIA officers and State Department personnel are being treated.
A lot of suspicion is placed on Russia. They've denied it.
We know that this is something that's been widespread, and we will keep at it until we find who's responsible, and we will hold whoever it is accountable.
A new law requires the government to compensate victims for qualifying brain injuries. Still to be determined what qualifies as a brain injury, and many of these victims are disabled, unable to work.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.
Pretty amazing stuff. Seriously.
Cheryl Cruz speaking out for the first time
2 years ago. This is Canadian media.
There is new information tonight about how government officials dealt with a mysterious illness that affected 23 Canadian diplomats in Cuba's capital. It's been over 3 years since some embassy staff came down with concussion-like symptoms that came to be known as HAVANA syndrome. Now, documents obtained by Global News show employees were warned to stay silent on the issue. Here's Mike Drolet.
For Canadian diplomats, the sun, culture, and political intrigue of Havana, Cuba was a dream posting. But in 2017, that all changed when 5 embassy staff and their families suddenly developed medical issues that would become known as the Havana syndrome. One staffer currently involved in a $28 million lawsuit against the federal government and who was given the pseudonym Diplomat Allen by the courts says he was awoken by a mysterious sound in the middle of the night.
Ooh.
Screeching, metallic scraping.
Of course, we've got to disguise the voice. These fucking journalists are so lame, these nerds. They all think they're spies. They all think they're like these, oh boy, we got to do the special voice disguise effect so we protect the identity of these top secret assets, complaining about cicadas bothering them at night in their embassies in their countries that they're trying to occupy and destabilize. We've got to put the super secret deep throat voice effect on there. Just to show how serious this is.
Noise that just flooded the room. And I listened to it for about 20 or 30 seconds. And then as it was fading, it went woo, 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 woo.
He says he was overcome with nausea, and at the same time his eldest son's nose started gushing blood. When he reported what happened, weeks before, he says a Miami neurologist diagnosed he, his wife, and 2 sons with mild traumatic brain injuries.
Again, I'm going to update my stance. It's not real. If it is real, and it's, as they say, Cuba or China or whoever else operating this kind of directed energy pulse electromagnetism headache ray, I think it's good, and they should be allowed to have it. And number 3, it also might be real, and which is the thing that I'm just in this segment I'm coming around to more and more. It actually is real, and it's coming from these embassies as part of the weird spy CIA shit that they're trying to implement in these other places. I'm leaning towards option 3 actually right now. Israel, yeah. Israel famously is not real, though. That's the funny thing about that. Not a real country. But Rob, surely you believe Israel has the right to exist, right? Nope. No, I don't. Anyway.
He says he was told to stay quiet.
The one thing the ambassador told me that at that time was that do not tell any other Canadians. We cannot start mass hysteria.
Global News has obtained over 700 pages of heavily redacted documents related to
I
the
imagine.
case that
Can you imagine the fucking nerd journalist loser that was poring over these redacted documents, going, "Oh my goodness, this is so special. I'm like in a Tom Clancy novel." Working this global news reporter, just like regurgitating this obvious bullshit. Ooh, top secret Canadian eyes only. Ooh, oh my. You know what? I hope that Cuba has a diarrhea gun that they're pointing at CIA goons. That's what I mean. I don't believe that they do, but if they did have it, I think it would be cool. And I would support them having the ability to do that. Like I was saying before, Lana, if you're able to invent this like incredible technology, this some fantastic futuristic science fiction technology of this like directed electromagnetic pulse that gives people headaches and vertigo and nausea and nosebleeds under that level of like sanctions and the blockade, you know, I think that's an incredible accomplishment and we should celebrate that and not criticize them for it. Did you see the defector story? I don't think so. Yeah, just another huge W for Cuban socialism. That's right. What happened to the stream yesterday? Well, I was talking about this subject yesterday, and conveniently my outside internet wires were damaged right when I was in the middle of exposing this huge story in a crazy coincidence. I was conducting undercover operations inside a Dairy Queen and was finishing a huge milkshake as part of my cover when I suddenly struck by a stabbing pain along the roof of my mouth and in my skull. When it finally faded, I did see an Asian-looking person out of the corner of my eye. I believe this was a CCP energy weapon directed at me, but people call me crazy. That's right. Not only did I get a little headache when I was chugging my milkshake, my tummy was a little upset afterwards. I had to go to the bathroom shortly afterwards. after drinking this like gigantic milk and cream and sugar product. I felt a little nauseous afterwards. It must have been that directed energy beam. That's the only reason. They have a gun that activated my lactose intolerance. Oh, Sinchel, I just had the weirdest flashback. That's from Cable Guy. That's a Cable Guy reference, isn't it? I read that chat. I think it was Asian. And I recognized that immediately, but didn't know where. And it's from the fucking Cable Guy. Yeah, here's the John. I'll look at the John Cipher exchange right after this. Dakadoon, thank you for finding that. I got it.
Corroborate plaintiff claims that officials were more interested in keeping the story quiet than finding the cause. In multiple documents, officials referred to attacks, but after it was reported that 40 U.S. Embassy personnel had the same symptoms, officials decided to stop using the word. The cause of the debilitating sound is still a mystery. One expert believes it was the mating call of the Indian short-tailed cricket. And when electrical engineering expert James Lynn published his theory of concentrated microwaves produced by military-grade weapons, Lynn says Canadian officials dialed him up.
There are some people, I wouldn't say who, but some people from Canada had contact with me and try to understand what might have happened, what could have been done if indeed people intend to do it.
15 of the 23 Canadians impacted are involved in the lawsuit. 2 years after their lives were impacted, the embassy in Havana remains an unaccompanied posting, meaning it's too risky for diplomats to bring their families. Mike Drolet, Global News, Toronto.
Here's my exchange with John Cipher. And I'm to this day, you know, John Cipher of the CIA. I still don't know if he's doing a bit here. You know? I don't know if he's doing a bit. When he says, my hair wasn't always white. Russians used chemicals, poisons, bullets, nerve agents, directed energy, and information as weapons. And I did laugh at this, you know? This guy is a CIA spook, you know, and the CIA is one of the most evil organizations in modern history, the largest exporter of terrorism, terrible, evil, demonic institution. I did laugh at this exchange, though, I must admit. You don't have to hand it to John Cipher, CIA agent John Cipher. You know, but I did laugh at this. But like, is he actually being serious? Seriously, like I know he's a CIA guy. We've looked at his statements before. He's always talking about this stuff. He's talking about Ukraine all the time, and of course, standing alongside our friends in the anarchist and social democrat and NATO Bidenist movement, standing bravely alongside all those left wing individuals in their support for Ukraine, obviously. But like, yeah, it just seems like a joke. Yeah. John Cipher, the CIA agent. It's just absurd. That was funny. And then this too. Like, is he being serious? Miles Clee says Putin must be held accountable for his hair whitening lasers. And he's just like, this seems like a weird Twitter bit that he's doing. You know, I can't even tell. I genuinely can't. Like, do CIA agents have a sense of humor? I don't know. Very weird. Anyway, that was a funny exchange, though. What else do we got here? Okay, something interesting here as well. Check this out. So this is from the Politico story. I didn't know that they were involved in this. I'm sure there's some interesting tweets to this effect that we could check into as well. Check out this article from Politico, though. This is, what's the date on this? August 18th, 21. U.S. officials in Berlin report potential HAVANA syndrome cases. Suspected directed energy attacks have hit American diplomats around the globe. Again, this was not just like a quack random journalist storyline. Like, this was mainstream media. Directed energy weapons. Why would Cypher block me and not Rob? I actually don't know. I couldn't tell you. Maybe because even though he disagrees with my viewpoint, he still sees me as a respected journalist and commentator. Unlike you, Matt, out there with all your muckraking or whatever. So amazing. Can't stress enough, though, how much this was like a mainstream media thing. This idea of a directed energy attacks going after American diplomats. This was like Politico, CNN, NBC, all of them going in on this like completely like fantastical science fiction story about a headache. Like, it's literally a headache ray that causes headaches and nausea and vertigo and nosebleeds to American diplomats. Check what else is in here, though. The U.S. government is investigating after several staff members at the American Embassy in Berlin started experiencing symptoms similar to a mysterious condition known as HAVANA syndrome that has been hitting U.S. diplomats and spies around the globe. 2 U.S. officials said the staff members in Berlin started reporting symptoms in recent weeks, confirming a report in the Wall Street Journal on Wednesday, including nausea, headaches, ear pain, fatigue, and insomnia. Again, I have this shit now. You don't see me complaining about it. Yeah, I fucking have sleep apnea. That's my problem. You know? Jesus. Some were unable to work due to the severity of their symptoms and have been sent home. HAVANA syndrome, named after the Cuban capital where it was first documented in 2016, is still not completely understood, but some scientists believe it could be the result of microwave pulse weapons. Like, this is the plausible deniability, right? But some scientists believe. Who are these scientists? Like, I'm not sure. Maybe we can get into that, but they get someone says like, okay, I guess this, in theory, this is possible. And then this mainstream journalists run with this story. Some scientists believe it could be the result of microwave pulse weapons, a so-called directed energy attack by a foreign actor. It has since also reportedly befallen U.S. officials in China, Russia, and Austria, just to be clear who they're suggesting who these foreign actors are. U.S. lawmakers have been pushing the Biden administration to ramp up its efforts to get to the bottom of the unexplained ailments. Look at this, though. Look at this. This is interesting. While the cause of the illness remains a mystery, U.S. investigators suspect Russia might be involved. Germany's Der Spiegel and investigative journalism website, Bellingcat. Investigative journalism website, Bellingcat, also reported Wednesday that for some time, Russian government agencies have been working through a secret program on a method of remotely emitting dangerous waves via a target's cell phone. This really sophisticated pills, this is yet another in a long list of examples of things that do indeed make you go, huh. Last month, The New Yorker reported that Vienna is the new hotspot for HAVANA syndrome, with more than 24 cases registered in the Austrian capital, making it the second most affected city after Havana. So when you click on this, though, it says Bellingcat reported, but then it brings you to this Der Spiegel link, which I guess you have to subscribe to. I don't know where the official story is on Havana syndrome. Do we have any tweets from some of our friends in the Bellingcat investigative journalism outlet? Here, it's kind of interesting. Like, you see Bellingcat being involved in the research for this, but then you have, Bellingcat contributors joking around about it on social media and saying, oh, it's not that big of a deal. To give this like kind of ironic distance between it, while their own organization is promoting the story behind the scenes and leading to coverage in Politico and other mainstream outlets. Very interesting. This was great too. Let's not forget this. There's a lot of great journalism on this. For like also fellow Russian obsessed, like basically liberal conspiracy theorist Julia, is it Ioffe? I don't know how to pronounce her name, who actually follows me on Twitter for some reason. Maybe it's to monitor my like Kremlin propaganda output. I don't know. I don't think I've ever engaged with her, so I don't know what that's about. Did a story on this in Puck News. There are now so many cases of Havana syndrome that Walter Reed is at capacity. The U.S. government has started outsourcing cases to other hospitals. She was all over this. I'm sure there's a lot of good tweets from her from this. Am I not spelling that correctly? Ioffe.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Can't seem to find tweets about it, even though she has a tweet that we were just looking at about it. Oh, she wrote this piece in GQ as well. She's been on this for a while. This was Julia Ioffe in GQ, October 19th, 2020. The mystery of the immaculate concussion. He was a senior CIA official tasked with getting tough on Russia. Then one night in Moscow, Mark Polymeropoulos' life changed forever. He says he was hit with a mysterious weapon, joining dozens of American diplomats and spies who believe they've been targeted with this secret device all over the world and even at home on U.S. soil. Now, as a CIA investigation points the blame at Russia, the victims are left wondering why so little is being done to help them. I gotta say, it's like, I think I underestimated when this was going on, how much damage the Russiagate story was doing, when it was happening. And promoting people like Julia Ioffe, who became these big developed these huge platforms on this kind of Russia bad beat. And weaving these crazy conspiracy theories about Russia. Of course, Rachel Maddow as well went down this direction. And you see how that psychological groundwork was played on this huge audience of very receptive liberals who tune into MSNBC and these kind of like journalistic outlets every week. How it really laid this groundwork for them to believe absolutely anything, any wacky conspiracy about Russia that these spooks could dream up. You know? I don't think even when it was going on, because I think, it's Trump, and Trump was obviously corrupt and probably did have a lot of like shady foreign contacts with all kinds of folks. But, I don't think I realized when it was happening just how much damage that was doing to people psychologically. It serves exactly the same function for liberal brains that QAnon does for chuds. Well, for sure. And then it allows people to like start protecting these evil institutions like the FBI and the CIA and believing them to be like these heroes that are doing these important investigations, digging into this, right? It's a way to like uphold all these institutions. So she did that in 2020, and she did this, a Cold War saga in Biden's Washington. Members of the intelligence community are increasingly convinced that the Russian government, which members, that's the question, just like which scientists believe that it's a possibility. Members of the intelligence community are increasingly convinced that the Russian government is behind the hundreds of terrifying directed energy attacks. I gotta just marvel every time I read that phrase in any of these outlets. Directed energy attacks on diplomats and spies known as the HAVANA syndrome. Will Congress respond to the medium confidence intelligence with countermeasures? As one member of the community told me, we got bin Laden with medium confidence. You got to wonder like what these journalists are asking for in those situations as well. How are they going to respond? Like, what are you suggesting that America does in response to this? Oh, and by the way, someone subscribed a moment ago and I didn't say thank you. Sorry, Critical Mass. One entire year of Tier 1 from Critical Mass. Thank you for the Tier 1. I appreciate it, Critical Mass. Thank you. But what do these journalists actually want? Like, what are you suggesting? Do you think we should start a war with Russia over these directed energy attacks? Do you think part of the reason they've given up on this story is because now Russia did end up invading Ukraine? They rose to the provocations and invaded Ukraine and kind of gave them all the Russia bad ammunition that they needed, that they could kind of just mothball this whole story and just be like, yeah, it turns out there was nothing to that. Do you think that's part of it? It's like, we don't need to sell people on Russia being scary and bad anymore because now we have this nonstop example of it. So we don't really need to go to these lengths to try and do this anymore. Yeah, and then all part of the big pivot to China. That's right. Covering Putin on Frontline PBS. And again, folks, if you're one of these like, we must stand with Ukraine, Russia bad, black and white, repel the orc invasion people, these are who your allies are. So just to once again point that out. Oh, here she is on ABC News Australia.
As you said, it started in late 2016.
Australia is always, they're willing to go a little bit farther with some of these like accusations.
As you said, it started in late 2016. It first hit American diplomats and American spies posing as diplomats in Havana. And basically some people heard a sound, some people didn't hear anything. But people started coming down with debilitating vertigo, nausea, sleeplessness, inability to concentrate. A lot of people couldn't work anymore. That it led to the embassy being basically shut down.
I love that. Well, they were spies, but they were posing as diplomats, just exposing what these embassies are and what their function is and who works there. They're all diplomatic attachés and shit like that.
between America and Cuba. Then the same.
I would love to see some artist reconstructions
same
on this as well.
phenomenon
That'd be
popped up
great.
in China and the
No
consulate
one wants
in
to work
Guangzhou,
anymore.
and then
They're quiet
incidents in
quitting.
Shanghai. And now we know that these, what we think are now attacks from directed energy weapons that cause these this damage to the brain have been happening in Georgia, Poland, London, Australia now, Taiwan, and now at home on U.S. soil.
So far more widespread than initially thought. Take us through again just what we understand when you're talking about a microwave-based attack. What sort of
This is ABC News Australia. This is not Alex Jones. Again, we talk about Alex Jones as if he's in his own crazy category of wacko conspiracy tinfoil hat shit, which is true in many ways. But then you have mainstream journalists going on to ABC Australia to talk about microwave energy weapons making spies have nausea. You get what I mean? You know? It's really amazing how the fine line that exists between this conspiracy world and this mainstream reporting journalism.
Talk you through all this.
Oh goodness, Mikey. Thank you for the 2 gifted subs. Thank you, Mikey. I appreciate that. We made it to the sub goal. That's wonderful. That's wonderful, Mikey. Thank you. Hell yeah. This is Chud saying they found bamboo fibers on 2020 ballots. For sure, there's no separation between the wacko right-wing conspiracy stuff and this stuff. Just people on TV talking nonsense all day and night. Like, again, our moms and dads and pappies and meemaws, they're all watching this stuff every night. Probably a lot of your parents are either glued to MSNBC every night or glued to CNN every night or glued to Fox News. And they're just on a nightly basis hearing the most fucking insane shit nonstop pumped into their brains, or Facebook. Yeah, which is even worse. Jesus.
Is that?
So it's a directed energy weapon as far as we understand.
And so, I'm sorry, this is wild, okay? Especially looking at this in the context of the way that this is being walked back right now. Like, this is on TV. And the way that, like, some scientists said, okay, I guess it's a possibility. And some diplomats said, like, oh yeah, we think it might be a possibility that this is what's going on. And then Julia Ioffe takes that and goes on TV and turns it into, like, this is what some people are speculating. This is what they think it is, you know? And giving this totally distorted idea about this completely wacky, far-reaching, like, science fiction storyline. And suggesting like this is the what people believe is real. This is what's really happening. You know, it's really wild stuff. Directed energy brainwave guns. And remember, you know, I always think back to that clip with John Stockwell, talking about John Stockwell from the CIA planting stories in the media. We've talked about how from the 70s to now, the process has become so streamlined where now you just have like CIA people just going on TV. You have John Cipher, like we were talking about before, just going on TV and saying whatever. But you really feel that in these moments as well. These journalists who are essentially, whether you're talking about Julia Ioffe in this story, whether you're talking about these global news people that are going on right now about just repeating CSIS talking points on TV in Canada, just like whether either willingly or unwillingly, just be acting basically as like hand puppets for these intelligence agencies, right? It's all just Raytheon. But as I've been pointing out as well, like where does Raytheon's money comes from the U.S. government, you know? I think we need to stop thinking about these private defense contractors as being private. You know, they're funded by the U.S. government. And then they turn around and take those funds and put them into think tanks, put them into NGOs, put them into the media. Like the weapons contractors finance a lot of the media as well, you know? And ultimately, even though they're private corporations, they're being funded by the U.S. government.
It directs electromagnetic radiation. Apparently,
I've got to hear this one more time.
Attacked. What sort of weapon is that?
So it's a directed energy weapon, as far as we understand. It directs electromagnetic radiation, apparently, at the brain, and it causes
apparently
damage
doing a lot
to
of work there.
From what we understand, damage to the white matter. That's the deeper part of the brain where all the kind of wiring networking is in the brain. And that's the part of the brain that doesn't regrow, doesn't replace itself. And so some of this damage is permanent.
So the belief from those that have been attacked or have suffered is that it is a foreign actor involved in this. And the fingers are being pointed at Russia. What have your investigations uncovered?
Julia.
So I should also say, by the way, about the weapon, the U.S. also has this kind of weapon, but it's very large from what we've seen.
Yes.
From my reporting,
it's probably in the basement of these embassies, Julia.
It's portable. You can beam it through.
Julia follows me. Maybe I should DM her and see if I don't want to debate, but maybe I should have Julia come on the program to try and explain this stuff to us. Even government departments that should be basically fine and not nefarious are basically military surveillance agencies like the DOE, who the Department of Energy, Lana, as you know, just put out that story this week being like, hey, maybe there was a lab leak in Wuhan about this. The DOE, what the fuck are they doing weighing in on that? So great example of that. Even the U.S. military budget is not a complete representation of just how much of a police state the U.S. is. Because that's only stuff that's on the books. And as we know from like documented reporting that's been done on this, like a lot of the CIA funding is coming from dealing drugs in South Central Los Angeles and working with these drug cartels and taking part in this massive global black market with both drugs and weaponry. So the $800 billion annually, that's just what's on the books of the U.S. government. Who knows how many untold hundreds of billions are flowing in from these black markets that they also have their fingers in. You know? Yeah, we do run the global drug trade. Yeah. Like, what do you think the Afghanistan war was about? It wasn't about catching bin Laden. When they found bin Laden, he wasn't even he was in Pakistan, just hanging out in one of our allies' places. And then you had that, like, CIA-financed film that suggested that they found his location because of torture, when in fact they probably were just like, okay, it's time to go round this guy up, and knew exactly where he was the entire fucking time. What was that movie? It was not The Hurt Locker. That was the Jeremy Renner one. Zero Dark 30, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. Which was, again, financed by the State Department, partially at least, and they were heavily implicated in like in an advisory role in that film. Anyway, let's continue this. This is really fantastic stuff.
Walls, through windows, and up to a couple miles away. From what I have found, CIA investigators have correlated the travel of agents from the FSB, or the Russian security services, that places these agents in and around the space where people were attacked. These are CIA officers who were attacked around the same time, including in Australia. In two instances where CIA officers were attacked, the FSB agents were actually in the same hotel at the same time that the attacks occurred. So this is not a slam dunk case just yet, but it is the beginning of an investigation that
no, it isn't,
CIA
Julia.
investigators hoped the agency would pick up and run with, but it has been basically squashed, they believe, because the leadership is too scared to bring
Maybe because it sounds
anything
fucking
Russia
ridiculous,
related
Julia.
to our president.
Maybe that's why it got squashed, because they're like, do you hear yourselves right now?
these attacks also happened in Russia, admittedly against US diplomats, US officials. Could that have been a deliberate ploy to distract attention from Russia as a perpetrator?
No, I think if anything, it points the finger at the Russians. That it happens on Russian soil. Russia controls what happens on its territory pretty carefully, and the fact that
those embassies around the world are on U.S. territory. What about Vienna? Does Russia control Vienna?
At the time on a new effort to push back against Russian covert actions and active measures. Really kind of. Seems like it would be the Russians, wouldn't it?
It just seems like that.
It is funny because Russia still
it just
seems
feels
to
like
just
that.
have this real
of
Cold
course.
War mentality without presuming
Again,
that
that's
they are
the
guilty
laying
in
the
this instance.
Russiagate, laying the
It's not a
groundwork for
slam
being
dunk,
able to
but
get away with that kind of
They
stuff.
do seem to be the foreign actor that
Doesn't it kind of sound like something
acts
Russia
in
would
this
do?
Cold
And all the
War
people watching on
mentality.
TV are like, yeah, it does.
Yes, and
Those devious Russians.
As a lot of people that I spoke to about this, who
Those
work on this
nefarious
issue,
Asiatic
they don't understand why Russia is still doing this.
barbarians.
They want us to. In some ways, they hate that they've become this third rail of American politics, but they kind of love that they're this boogeyman that everybody's talking about, that they're feared.
Yeah,
they
you
know they're
contribute
not
to
going
that,
to be loved by
Julia.
the Americans, but might as well be feared and respected. And
Yeah, they
have
literally
their
just said
opinion
that they're the
taken
ones that
into
are starting
account
it.
on the
Russia
world
and China
stage.
are the ones that are starting the new Cold War.
When they're in this
These people
Cold
are so
War
brazen,
mentality,
John.
what that means for them is that
brazen.
they're still a superpower and that they're still treated like a superpower with the respect and awe that they think they deserve.
It's ironic, though, because as you pointed out, is Donald Trump has not been willing to take on the Russians. If they say they weren't
he
involved,
was, though.
he just simply says they say they weren't involved.
Like, I think Trump, because he was under this immense amount of pressure over this exact thing, sanctioned Russia, continued to arm Ukraine under Trump. This idea that Trump was allowed the Russians to get away with everything is just not true. Like, they literally sanctioned Russia and Iran in order to own Trump, which actually violated the Iran deal that a lot of these Democrats supported. They sanctioned them just to own Trump, and Trump signed the sanctions. Trump, again, continued to arm Ukraine during that period, precisely because he was under this relentless amount of pressure, probably for this exact reason, to pressure him into not disrupting the status quo in any way, which he didn't do. Again, as much as Trump claimed in the primary to be like against that kind of security state status quo, I'm going to get us out of NATO. I'm criticizing all these foreign interventions. He didn't do anything. He continued things completely business as usual, including against Russia. Important treaties entered under Trump as well. Yeah. This idea that Trump was just soft on Russia is completely false. Liberals are just as untethered from reality as the most batshit conservative in some way or the other. I guess the weird contradiction, Moss, comes from this weird clash between their sort of conspiratorial thinking, their bloodlust, like we talked about the dronies, their warmongering, combined though with this kind of like unrelenting projection that they're the arbiters of like progressivism and that they have these wonderful values of human rights and that kind of thing. That's always the thing that kind of makes me confused and makes me feel weird about it, you know? Conservatives at least just own up to being like blood drinking lunatics, you know? I don't respect them for it, but like at least they're honest mostly about their purely evil intentions. But liberals, like that's the whole thing with Malcolm X and the liberals, those dangerous people in our society, right? And that's exact Malcolm X quote about the wolf in sheep's clothing, right? But liberals have this veneer of progressivism and benevolence while being just as detached from reality and being just as reactionary and, servants of empire as well.
I believe them. So it is interesting that they've chosen to do it over this period of time when Trump has been in power and not really scrutinizing them.
That's right. Well, I think that there's also people, in the Russian
The
security
fox smiles and makes you think he's your
agencies
friend.
who just do this. They're used to doing this. They've been doing this for decades. And until they meet resistance or some kind of pushback or somebody slapping them on the hand, they're going to keep going further and further and further. You know, in 2019, as I found in my reporting, they were slipping date rape drugs in the drinks of CIA officers who were at receptions in American embassies. I mean, that's crazy.
It is completely crazy. Are the people, at least, who suffered, the diplomats, the CIA officials, have they been given compensation? Have they been treated seriously?
Not really. Unfortunately, our government is not really doing much for the people affected. This is the reason the main, character in my story, Mark Polymeropoulos, who was a very senior CIA official, the equivalent of a 4-star general. This is the reason he spoke out. He got basically doctors inside the CIA telling him he's crazy. This is what's happening to State Department officials, Commerce Department officials who have been affected. They're not getting the treatment or the support that they deserve while being hit on the job, doing their duties, representing the American government. And they're deeply frustrated.
Seriously, Lana. Feels like a Joe Rogan interview. This is wild shit, seriously.
I guess we'll have to wait and see the outcome of the US election. Julia, fascinating. We really appreciate getting
it's really wacky when it's like, even though CNN and all these major news organizations covered this story, they had to outsource the really getting into the nitty gritty with Julia to Australia, right? They're like, that's a little too outside the norm for CNN. We can do ABC Australia. This is for the really out there stuff.
The benefit of your investigations. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Pretty amazing stuff. Pretty amazing stuff. So here's the story that just came out now. We've looked at a lot of like the absolute wacky stuff that's been in the media over the last couple of years. Here's what the story that's coming out today. And there was actually one a couple months ago that didn't get as much play, but
findings released
this is what they're saying
Wednesday
now.
Of an extensive U.S. intelligence community investigation that spanned the entire globe concluded it was, quote, very unlikely that a foreign adversary was responsible for HAVANA syndrome, the mysterious ailment that has afflicted U.S.
They launder the
diplomats
extreme
and
details through
intelligence
foreign media. I mean, that's exactly, Matt, that CIA playbook, right? We looked at that clip with John Stockwell. He outlines this process like specifically, exactly what it is.
officers worldwide. HAVANA syndrome symptoms, which were first reported among U.S. officials in the Cuban capital in 2016, have included migraines, nausea, memory lapses, and dizziness.
The book is never fully closed.
At a State Department briefing on Wednesday, spokesman Ned Price said the intelligence assessment did not put those symptoms in doubt.
The findings that the intelligence community has spoken to today in no way call into question the experiences, the symptoms that our colleagues and their family members have reported in recent years.
About 1,500 cases have been reported by U.S. government agencies and departments, including some from this year, but Price said that cases were on the decline.
What I can tell you is that the number of reported cases of
We scared them off.
have declined.
Once we talked about getting tough about this, they stopped doing the laser guns at us.
2021, there was a decline between 2021 and 2022. And so far this year, there has been a decline between
No, that's true, Blueberry. They definitely tried much less. They just say intelligence sources or these intelligence guys just go on TV
7 of the 18
themselves.
U.S. intelligence agencies conducted the more than 2-year investigation in more than 90 countries, including the United States.
How much did this investigation
found, quote,
cost?
no
Talk about the cost of the healthcare for this affliction. I wonder how much this 2-year investigation, which sounds like a nice vacation, going to all these different countries to investigate this horrible crime. I feel pretty bad for the guy or whoever got to investigate that. It's probably a fucking great gig.
credible evidence that any American adversary possessed.
Yeah, I'm going to need to hang out in Cuba. Can you send over a couple more million into the bank account? I'm going to need to hang out in Havana a couple more weeks. I don't know. I feel like I'm almost at the bottom of this. I got to do a couple more interviews. If you can just keep putting me up in the hotel. And of course, I'm going to keep I'm going to keep sending those credit card receipts over to you also, of course, right? And then I'll just have to go to Vienna. I'll have to go to Shanghai. I'll have to go to Moscow. It's going to take me at least a couple of weeks in each of these places, in a nice hotel to really get to the bottom of what's going on here. This sounds like a pretty good gig to me.
A weapon or collection device, including an emitter of electromagnetic energy pulses that could cause the symptoms. A U.S. intelligence official
John Kiriakou mentioned this in his interview on America Exception podcast, where the lavish spending after 9/11 was and is crazy. Yeah, I mean, it was just a free-for-all. They invented all these new agencies, in terms of the investigations that were going on too, but just the whole security state, the massive increase in it. What did they invent? DHS, ICE, multiple other big government agencies were just they just invented them. Well, the NSA was around before, but I think all these agencies also got increased resources.
So, look, nothing is more important to this administration, to this president, than the health and the well-being of our workforce. So that is a priority for this president. With bipartisan support with Congress, we have focused on ensuring that our colleagues and their families who report anomalous health incidents receive the support and access care that they need. And so that has
You still got to make sure we give them all the money.
Medical care
That's
that
not going
anywhere. Has been incredibly important. So we also asked the U.S. intelligence company to surge resources to help advance our understanding of the AHI reports to date and examine all possible explanations. We have committed to be transparent with the workforce because we believe that's what they deserve, and with the American people as well. But what the IC has learned, and we would refer you to clearly ODNI as it relates to the assessment and what the specifics of that assessment and the key judgments that the IC released, that's something that we clearly would recommend to them. But it is important to note that what the director of the National Intelligence said and underscored today is that today's IC assessment does not call into action the very real experiences and symptoms. We acknowledge that, and we understand that people are truly went through an ordeal. And so, and that's something that clearly our colleagues and their families
I feel like shit all the time, lady.
And the president's commitment to the health and
Where's
safety
my
of
medal?
U.S. government personnel remains unwavering, and this is why the
We
departments
see
and
you,
agencies
we
will
hear you, and
continue
we
to
respect your
provide
lived
timely
experiences
care
with
on
this
the
fake
as we
illness.
look at the medical care and make sure that that the reports are thorough, support research efforts, and process HAVANA Act payments as requested. So again, as it relates to any specific questions to their assessment, I would refer you to ODNI, but this doesn't change the commitment that the president
went through trauma.
has in making sure that these families are
We need to hold space for that.
in the workforce get the help and the assistance that they need, and they're going to continue to work through that.
Mind-boggling how much time was put into discussing this. So that's the thing. We can speculate about what's going on. It's I'm sure we won't know for sure until we see the declassified documents, 30 years from now. It does seem a little bit like there's different factions of the security state that are kind of working against each other here. So you got to wonder what has this all been about? Is it kind of like a psyop to test the limits of what people will believe? Is it just a way to promote? We need to get tough with Russia from that angle of the security state. Like I said, did they just feel like they no longer needed to promote this narrative when Russia invaded Ukraine and kind of rose to the provocation and actually invaded Ukraine like they said they were going to? And they said, well, we don't need to focus on this story about this headache ray anymore now that we can just talk about Ukraine and that we can get across our Russia bad viewpoint that way. it's interesting to speculate on what, if any, or what combination of different factors are animating this behind the scenes. But as usual, though, it was easy for me and for us in this community to correctly predict from moment one that this was a completely bullshit story. And it's really amazing looking back now on the mainstream media coverage of this and the kind of things they were talking about in mainstream media. Like, it's really incredible. I'm sure there's been some more pieces on this that have aired. Like, I want to see like some news people weighing in on this. NBC News, a whole 25-minute special last year, fighting an invisible enemy. The voices of Havana Syndrome. Amazing. Like, again, this was a huge multi-million-dollar coordinated media campaign last year. Like, we talked about it when we were on the stream last year, and it's really amazing to look back on it now. You got this 25-minute piece in NBC News. You got The Fifth Estate, Havana Syndrome, investigating what made the diplomats sick from 3 years ago. New York Times, how an alleged sonic attack shaped U.S. policy on Cuba. That was part of it as well, right? Because Obama, and I think this is an interesting angle to this story, because Obama had taken a few small steps to normalize diplomatic relations with Cuba and to ease sanctions on Cuba. Under Trump, obviously that reversed, and that was the beginning of Havana Syndrome, very deliberately called Havana Syndrome. So that's part of it, is a way to signal that any deviation from the sanctions and from the blockade on Cuba is not going to happen, and a way to justify reinstituting those sanctions despite Cuba not actually doing anything to deserve that, other than just trying to exist with their own kind of economic system. And that's when this story really started at first and picked up steam throughout the Trump era. My theory is that the reason they make insane claims like this with no evidence before moving on to the next insane claim is that they know most people won't believe any one of these claims, but a few people will believe each one on no evidence. So the idea is to make everyone hate a country for different reasons that don't have to be mutually intelligible. For sure, and a lot of people do believe these stories, and then there's this huge media push, and then when the wave of stories comes afterwards, it's like, oh no, this didn't actually, we actually looked into it and it's not that. They don't remember that part. They just remember that Cuba and Russia and China have a microwave headache ray, and then it doesn't really matter what actual clarifications happen or any of that. They still just continue believing that because they remember that big media push. How an alleged sonic attack shaped U.S. policy on Cuba. I think this is an important key.
The CSI investigation, this famous TV program, where the investigators don't have the murder weapon, don't have the place, don't have access to the victims. How the hell you investigate that? It's impossible. So you're gonna
late 2016.
The spooky Havana. Music with the flag. I always looking at the B-roll. The B-roll is great.
Are you aware of any type of technology that would cause this?
No, I'm not.
The New York Times.
Diplomats were complaining of crushing headaches.
A mouthpiece of U.S. imperialism. It's one of its primary functions for that liberal audience.
Sound.
Yeah, surprised we didn't get the sepia filter.
Cubans,
that's true.
They said they knew nothing about it. But that sound is why this building is nearly empty at this important moment for Cuba. For the first time in 60 years, its leader will not be a Castro.
Two things we know for sure.
Here's what the U.S. government has said about the sound.
People were hurt, and the Cuban government knows who did it.
Of course, Marco Rubio, fucking Gusano, piece of shit, is one of the people that was promoting this as well.
That, quite frankly, is so sophisticated, we don't understand it. It leads you then, so you have a sophisticated...
In Washington, Senator Marco Rubio convened a hearing.
Was the early opinion of the security professionals who looked at it that it was likely a form of harassment?
Okay. In late 2016, staff at the United States Embassy in
Isn't the
Havana
music?
began complaining of strange noises. And among the descriptions that they complained of, high-pitched beam of sound or just intense pressure in one ear. There are 24 Americans who during their time in Havana have experienced symptoms that are consistent with what you would see in mild traumatic brain injury and or concussion.
Doctors said that diplomats' brain matter had actually changed. What started out as a mysterious nuisance,
His family actually left under
became a
Batista, but claims they fled
suspected instrument
Castro.
of
That's
attack.
interesting. And unsurprising.
Tillerson reacted as he would have reacted when he was an oil executive. He heard something happen in an oil rig, get everybody out of there.
Secretary of State Rex Tillerson ordered his staff.
We are convinced these were targeted attacks. We don't like our diplomats being targeted.
Depart your post, he said. Leave Cuba. And they
remember,
did.
this was after
Everyone from
Obama.
the people who
They
discussed
did soften
trade
some
down
of
to
the
those who processed
diplomatic
visas.
stances towards Cuba.
The incident had become political.
So it's almost like it's something that started just for this explicit reason, to reinstitute sanctions on Cuba and to ensure that no diplomatic relations were normalized. And then it just kind of like the story kind of got out of hand. That's part of it too, it seems like. I don't want to watch this entire 13-minute piece though. That's a lot. That is a lot. But this is from the New York Times 4 years ago. Rex Tillerson, the Exxon CEO. Yeah, exactly. Here's the disturbing sounds from 5 years ago, the AP 5 years ago. AP obtains a recording of what some U.S. embassy workers heard in Havana. We're going to hear this mysterious sound. Folks, please, if you're worried about getting nausea or headaches or nosebleeds from this kind of directed energy attack, please turn off the sound on your computer and turn it back up in a few moments. I don't want to make anyone sick or ill or affect anyone with this kind of like dangerous technology. This is a little bit of a warning before this segment, okay?
The recording gives us the first tangible sense of what it was like for these American government workers in Havana who were hearing these unexplained sounds in their residences and later developed physical symptoms. Americans who heard these sounds in Havana have described slightly different
sounds like
sounds.
a fucking cricket.
And
I
even
don't
in
know.
some of the recordings
It's
that the AP
earplugs.
has reviewed, there are slight variations. However, this
Just put in
high-pitched cricket
earplugs.
sound
You should be
seems to
okay. Put
appear
on
in
some
all of
noise
them.
canceling headphones.
The U.S. Embassy in Havana has played these recordings for Americans who are working
We're all
there so they know
infected
what to
now.
listen to.
We're
These
all
recordings
infected.
have also been reviewed by people who heard the sounds firsthand in Cuba.
Oh, look at this. Folks, continue subscribing to the
sound
channel.
seems to appear in all of
Continue subscribing to TRRS. You love it. Please continue. Ooh, you want to subscribe. Yes.
The U.S. Embassy in Havana has played these recordings for Americans who are working there so they know what to listen to. These recordings have also been
mind
reviewed
controlling
by
you
people
now.
who heard the sounds firsthand in Cuba, and they confirm that the recordings are generally
I'm mind
consistent with
controlling
what they
you.
heard.
Isn't that fucked up? Ooh, subscribe to TRRS. You love
We
it.
still don't know what is causing the sound, and the recordings don't appear to have significantly furthered the investigation. Even with the recordings being analyzed, the U.S. government still says it has been unable to determine what is causing the sound.
His voice
You
is
won't
more
be hearing
annoying.
it.
Put the
but
sound
of course
back on.
It is going into your system.
Ugh.
It's like acoustic hammer which is hitting you. You're just not able to hear it because its frequency is much higher. So there were some concerns to it, and if it is really, really high, it could create some, what we call as a bioeffects.
It's possible that
An
what we're hearing on
automata
the
trying to
recording
post
is
about Havana
actually only
syndrome.
part
Oh,
of the
no.
picture. Traditional recording devices are only able to pick up
have
certain
nothing to
types
do
of
with that.
frequencies, such as the ones that the human ear can hear. It's possible there are additional frequencies, possibly those too low or too high to be picked up that are also
You can count on
happening
me.
when these
You're gonna
attacks
have good
occur.
old Rob to talk you through all this.
Help, I've come down with HAVANA syndrome, hungry.
Benny, thank you very much for the 23 months of tier 1. We need to get Benny a snack. Stat. Thank you again, Benny.
In our World Lead today, in a rare interview, we're hearing from a CIA agent who was attacked, not with a gun or a poison.
Again, we talked about it a few moments ago, the whole laundering stories in the press thing, right? Sometimes they just skip the middleman. Why launder these stories in foreign press, and we can just walk right down the street to CNN and just walk right onto the TV set and just do it there?
Poison, not by
Jake.
terrorists or a narco-criminal gang, but with a mysterious invisible weapon that terrorizes its victims with a lifetime of excruciating headaches. The attack, apparently used against American diplomats in Cuba as well, starting in late 2016, is thus now called HAVANA syndrome, and it has perplexed doctors for years. Today, the man who hopes to be the new CIA director was asked how to handle these attacks, as CNN's Kylie Atwood reports.
Okay, so you got the CIA director
with an incredible
and
case of
the
vertigo.
agent.
The room was spinning. I wanted to throw up.
Mark Polymeropoulos, a former U.S. intelligence officer at the CIA, was hit in 2017
He was the source in the
by
other
an
story as
invisible
well.
attack in a Moscow hotel.
I'd been in places like Iraq and Afghanistan. I'd been shot at, but this was by far the most terrifying experience of my life.
It's a mystery that's plagued the U.S. intelligence community and the State Department for years. An attack which brain experts now say was likely the result of a microwave
They're
weapon
amateurs.
hitting American personnel in Cuba, China, Russia, and other places around the globe. The U.S. government has
You
not
do the
identified
COVID
the
Judd shake.
perpetrator,
Yes.
but current and former U.S. officials believe Russia is to blame. The Russian government did not respond to CNN's request for comment. The attack impacted his balance.
The Russian government did
sight,
not dignify
and
our
hearing.
question with the
The pain
response.
has never wholly subsided.
I couldn't, make it through the day, not even close. I've had a headache every day since that night in Moscow. It's never gone away day and night.
He had to retire early, and for a dedicated CIA officer who spent his entire career fighting terrorists in the Middle East, it hasn't been easy to accept that an
This guy has
invisible
done some
strike
horrible
took him
things.
out of the game.
God, CIA agent over the last 20
This is a
years
silent wound.
fighting
It's
terrorism in the Middle East. This man has done some horrendous
Well,
things.
it's something that I could have shown people. I had a really hard time initially at the agency because people didn't necessarily, the senior medical staff didn't necessarily believe me.
It's a bummer, dude.
Polymeropoulos had to fight to get expert health care. Just this month, he finished specialized treatment at Walter Reed Medical Center, more than 3 years after that traumatic night in Moscow.
When they provided me a piece of paper with a diagnosis that said I had a traumatic brain injury, I had
This man
tears
is a
in my
criminal.
eyes.
Some 40 U.S. government officials have experienced symptoms similar to his.
This man is a criminal. He should be in
2017,
prison.
The U.S. Embassy in Cuba
He works for a
slashed its staff because
terrorist
the attacks
organization,
were so
the
pervasive.
CIA.
A newly declassified State Department report
I do not
points
feel
to
sympathy for
systemic
him.
disorganization when the department began handling this crisis during the Trump administration. New Hampshire Senator Jeanne Shaheen has been fighting to get the victims medical assistance and answers about who did this.
If we don't hold those responsible accountable, then we can be sure it's going to
Democrat.
continue to happen. And that's a
the
national
Foreign
security
Relations
risk to
Committee.
the United States and to our personnel.
According to U.S. intelligence documents obtained by CNN, Russia has been developing this microwave attack capability for decades. Today, Bill Burns, President Biden's nominee to lead the CIA, telling Congress,
I will have no higher priority than taking care of people, of colleagues and their families. I will make it an extraordinarily high priority to get to the bottom of who's responsible for the attacks.
Polymeropoulos created a Superman mask in art therapy, thrusting a dagger through Superman's skull to represent the headaches which have changed.
Talking about how everyone uses this psych language. This former CIA agent went to art therapy, and he made a special little art piece about this. What is this, show and tell? He went to art. This is his art therapy that he did. Are these people fucking 8 years old? Jesus. You know, the people that should be in therapy are the people that have been victimized by this evil organization around the world. They should be in therapy. I want to see the art therapy of people that live in Indonesia or Vietnam or Chile or any other number of nations that have been attacked by this horrendous evil organization. Why do we care about this person? He built a papier-mâché volcano to represent his exploding brain.
Him. The CIA
art therapy,
thrusting a dagger through Superman's skull to represent the headaches which have changed him. The CIA agency seal cracked. His family was emotional when he showed them his project.
My son and my daughter both said to me, Dad, you're still my Superman.
Before the attack happened, how would you describe your relationship with the agency in, one or two words?
It's a love affair.
And after?
A divorce. With perhaps some reconciliation in the future, I would hope.
Now, Jake, I have just learned from a U.S.
The real Havana
official
syndrome is that my wife
set up
left me.
its first ever task force in recent months to handle these suspected microwave attacks. And the official explains to me that they are going to use the breadth of resources at the CIA.
Yeah, you fucking assholes have to wipe out entire families. I don't need to hear about your shitty art projects.
And process in place to address any future incidents. We should also note that the CIA spokesperson, Timothy Barrett, said the agency's top priority has been and continues to be the well-being of their folks who are out in their field, of the intelligence officers. But this is something that we are going to stay on because this truly needs to be a whole-of-government approach if the process is going to work here.
All these brave journalists were really all over this. We need to hold the government accountable. There's been so many stories on this. This is the one from last year that I think we got the emote from, the Havana emote. In fact, could we see some... Show your TRRS Havana emotes in the chat, please. Let's see some Havanas. CIA has art therapy. Christ. These people are really something else. It's really amazing how much coverage there has been on this.
Welcome to the News Hour. It's a mystery that has challenged the country's intelligence community for years.
I gotta go after this.
1,500 reports of an unexplained illness known as the HAVANA syndrome, named after the city where U.S. diplomats and intelligence officials first suffered from dizziness, cognitive difficulties, even memory loss. Today, the intelligence community has assessed it was likely not the work of a foreign adversary. Nick Schifrin is here with more. Nick, it's good to see you.
Whomever could have, and I'll keep that in mind with all the footage that we just looked at.
What you just said, that the members of the intelligence community participating in this found it, quote, very unlikely a foreign adversary was responsible, very unlikely a weapon or any device purposely or accidentally caused the symptoms, and there's not even a consistent set of physical injuries that could be characterized as Havana syndrome. Now, there are varying levels of confidence, and not the entire intelligence community participating in this, but for the IC, this is as emphatic a conclusion as it makes. On serious conditions that we're talking about, that Americans suffered.
Did the victims know it was all BS? Well, that's China, the line that they're taking, is that the symptoms were real. The symptoms were real. It's just that they weren't coming from energy weapons being fired by the Cubans. They determined it was fake like 5 years ago. But I mean, we've seen the predominant amount of the coverage that we've been looking at here is from the last 5 years. From like last year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. There's been a huge, huge push on this. Like I've been saying, this is not like a minor thing. This is a big coordinated story in conjunction with the media and the security state, the intelligence community. It's really unbelievable stuff.
Russia, even the U.S. officials who suffer this here in the United States. But one official told us today we cannot tie a foreign adversary to any of those incidents.
So what evidence does the intelligence community provide?
Here's what these journalists are like, well, should we still discount it, though? Because I still think that was probably what it was.
Reporters today, one official said intelligence points against foreign involvement. And this official
so you're saying there's a chance
that adversaries, including China and Russia, expressed some confusion when the U.S. started reporting Havana symptoms. Many thought this was a U.S. plot.
Yeah, that sounds about right. When we talked to the Chinese and the Russians about this, they were just like, are you fucking kidding us? Are you fucking kidding us with this? And they laughed in our faces and then suggested that we were just doing some kind of weird op to them. Can you believe these guys? Can you believe these jokers? It wasn't an adversary and our officers weren't lying, so the CIA did it to themselves. Well, yeah, I think they probably did, but that's not what they're admitting now. In fact, I don't even know what they're admitting. If they're saying the symptoms are real, we saw the U.S. State Department taking this line and the White House. The symptoms are real. These people all went through this crazy ordeal, but it's not a directed energy microwave weapon being fired by Russia. So what is it? If it's real, what is it then? They don't know.
To blame them for something. There was no evidence, this official went on to say, that Ukrainians or any kind of partner country suffered from any systematic attack
evidence,
or any evidence that an adversary was even
not a reason that we shouldn't talk about this for years in our media.
They would have seen if they believed an adversary was behind this. As for the weapon, previous assessments that the intelligence community has considered said that directed energy might have caused these symptoms. The intelligence official told us, quote, those were all washed out. There was no evidence, this official said, that any adversary
directed energy weapons. These people are really something else.
Microwave, for example, that would have, this official said, had to have gone through concrete or had line of sight to some of these victims. But I just spoke with the head of the intelligence community experts panel, David Relman, and he disagreed. He said that the panel found
they got to get someone to disagree as well.
The device could have been portable, concealable, and there could have been more than one mechanism used. And he said, look, the U.S. simply doesn't
so it's just
know
making stuff up.
Enough about
it could have been this.
Energy to know for certain.
They could have had stuff hidden in the room panels.
So
that's making stuff up, though. You're just making stuff up.
If not a foreign adversary with a weapon, what then explains the symptoms that these people have come forward with?
Could have bounced it off a mirror.
Across 96 countries, yeah. It's a great
question. They could have done a lot of things.
The intelligence community does not have.
Maybe the rays were coming from a wormhole. Maybe we don't know that they didn't do that. We don't know that the Chinese or the Russians or the Cubans did not open wormholes in these diplomats' quarters and fired. Maybe they're working with some kind of, they're connected like that in that Christopher Nolan movie, Tenet. They connected with some kind of future people and through a wormhole, this fantastic future technology that doesn't exist, maybe it's firing from the future into our time, into these diplomats' quarters through these portals and wormholes, and that's what's doing it. Can we prove that that's not happening? No. So I bet you feel pretty silly now, don't you? We have to close the Tesseract gap. We have to close the tachyon. There's a tachyon gap with our enemies here, and they're using them against us. And I have no proof of this, but I believe that they're using these tachyons to fire futuristic energy beam weapons at us and our diplomats and our spies through wormholes leading to the future. Thank you. This is CNN. That's the breaking news. It's the breaking news sound.
A great answer. The officials who we spoke to briefed on a couple of possibilities for
They create the shape
what
of
the
an idea, then
victims
use
suffered
suggestive
from.
rhetoric
They
so you
talked
fill it
about
in yourself. That's
environmental
interesting, Lana.
circumstances.
It's all the great
One official even
novelists,
talked about a
right?
malfunctioning air
All the great
conditioner
novelists,
that
that's what
created
they do.
undue pressure in a room. The official talked about pre-existing medical conditions.
Breaking news, intelligence reports that China is in cahoots with the boogeyman. No closet is safe. No closet is safe. The boogeyman could be threatening you or your children, or spying on you on behalf of the Chinese Communist Party. We don't know that they aren't.
Conditions, what they called conventional illness in some of these cases, and social forces, otherwise known as
what they called
media attention,
conventional
causing more
illness.
people
This
to
clip is
report
amazing.
What they suffered, but that has not ameliorated what the victims felt. I talked to multiple former officials today who made the same point. 26 Americans and Canadians in Havana at the same time felt symptoms, and there were no pre-existing medical conditions among them, nor was there coordination between them when they suffered these victims.
That's why they don't need proof. It's all maybe and could have to
who,
avoid liability while putting
represents
ideas
a couple
in your head.
dozen of these victims and their families. He said, quote,
There's
"They were
certainly a number of
demoralized."
people that are just going to believe, again, that are just going to believe that Russia is firing lasers at Western diplomats. And that's what they will go. They'll go to their graves believing that. Like a not insubstantial number of people. Like, look at all that mainstream press that it was getting.
By these findings, and they disagree with them.
There is absolutely no doubt
This guy
that
again.
our foreign adversaries are very capable of doing this.
Absolutely
In fact, the
no doubt,
technology, frankly,
he says.
was created by the United States.
This guy with the giant My Cousin Vinny. What even is this? It's not a DVD case. Is this like some kind of deluxe box set? Like, what are these things? What are these? Is this a poster? Is this even a shelf, or is it a poster? Like, look it up here. I don't even think this is a shelf. I think this is like a display of some kind. What even is this? This is the big expert on this. Sitting behind the My Cousin Vinny poster. There is no doubt that Russia is capable of this. Zero. Who is this guy? This is just bizarre. This shit is bizarre.
5-6 decades ago. There are counterintelligence situations.
He's got I wish I could zoom in. I can't. He's got some kind of signed picture there too. I can't tell who it is. He's got some kind of signed picture. Looks like someone like from actors on a TV show.
That have arisen with respect to surveillance and interactions with human individuals with respect to our intelligence officers that have.
What even links these movies that they're on a poster together? I don't know.
Situations where
I don't know. Honestly, it's so perplexing. My Cousin Vinny, Grisham, The Firm, A Few Good Men, Anatomy of a Murder, JFK with Kevin Costner, Inherit the Wind, and To Kill a Mockingbird. I feel like we're getting MK Ultra right now.
electronic devices have
I'm
started
freaked
to act
out.
strangely in the midst of what the human individual interprets to be an AHI
Jesus.
AHI incident is an anomalous health incident. That's what we call the Havana syndrome. The intelligence officials I spoke to today responded to some of those criticisms and said that they did track down every lead, including the ones that Zaid pointed out. In an
They're so mad
investigation
about
they
this.
compared
They're
to
mad that
the
there's
Osama
this
bin
story is
Laden
having
before coming
getting
to their conclusions.
cold water poured
as
on
for
it.
the victims feeling rejected by today's assessment, CIA Director Bill Burns, Director of National Intelligence Avril Haines, all released statements saying the same thing, that they believed victims' pain was real, and that was echoed today by the State Department spokesman, Ned Price.
The findings that the intelligence community has spoken to today in no way
Just like movies about
call
lawyers,
into
I guess so.
The experiences, the symptoms that our colleagues...
It's like, rather than law books, this is what you have. No, I'm not a lawyer. But I've seen My Cousin Vinny like 7 times. I love it.
And their family members have reported.
Who's this
in recent
Lionel
years.
Hutz ass?
And so while
Source.
the victims do say their medical care has improved in the last few years,
It is a good
whether
movie.
or not they get receive care is independent
I
of
found the
today's
poster
assessment.
for $800.
They clearly believe that they were still target of a foreign adversary.
What?
And they are very upset by today's findings.
Nick Schifrin, thanks so much.
Hold on.
Clearly believe that they were still target of a foreign adversary, and they are very upset by today's findings.
Okay.
Nick Schifrin, thanks so
So
much.
got to
for
make
that.
sure we get that last word in there. Here's that poster. America's premier painter of books. $800. J. Scott Nickel, Justice for All. Aaron Brockovich was the other one, and 12 Angry Men and a Civil Action. This is that poster. What the hell? What is going on? That looks like something you should be able to find on Amazon for like $45. I thought there were books at first too, but they're so big. This man's dropping $1,000 on that poster. Okay, Mr. Hotshot. All right, Mr. Hotshot. A little bit of a flex. A little bit of a flex on the part of that guy. I gotta go, folks. This was fun, though. I'm glad we could do this today. Sorry that I wanted to do all this stuff tomorrow, or yesterday, rather, but wasn't able to because my internet got Havana syndrome. But thanks for everyone for tuning in and laughing at this incredibly bizarre story and trying to pull out all these little threads with me today. It was very fun. It was very fun to do this. I'll be back tomorrow. All right. Tomorrow will be the last stream for a little while. Again, I'm going to be leaving for a couple days. I'm going on vacation for March break with my partner and our kid, which he's really looking forward to. So it's going to be a lot of fun, spending that time with him over the next couple of days. I'm looking forward to that, but I will be back, I think, by the end of next week sometime, either Thursday or Friday, and I will try to kind of make up for some of the lost time. But this is tomorrow will be the last stream for a little while, so I hope everyone tunes in. I'll be here noon Eastern, 1 a.m. Pyongyang time, as usual. And I'll take a couple days off after. Ben, it's not a cult. Ben and PS. I appreciate your enthusiasm, but we all know that it's not a cult, so I think we should try to avoid... We don't know if Russia is involved in spreading any misinformation. We don't want to contribute to that. Any kind of misinformation about this being a cult, a psyop, a pyramid scheme, any of that stuff. It's not accurate and it's hurtful. It's a friendship opportunity. Yes, Lana. Lana gets it. It's a multilateral community. That's right. Can't be a pyramid scheme if it's a triangle. That's right. It's two-dimensional. I keep saying this. It's a triangular association. The cloud trickles down. It's patented. It's a patented system. Okay, so come back tomorrow, folks. You need at least 2 more triangles for that, exactly. Come back tomorrow, noon Eastern. Thanks for tuning in. I'll talk to you then. Take care. Goodbye. That's all.